From the sunlit beaches of Waikiki to the quiet fishing villages of Molokai. These 10 true affair stories aren't just tales of infidelity, they're haunting tragedies carved into the heart of Hawaii. A wife who live streamed her final words before taking her life. A husband haunted by a tattoo that didn't belong. A vow renewal that turned into a funeral. And a dinner that ended with death by poison fish. Each story uncovers betrayal, heartbreak, and the consequences no one could escape, all against the backdrop of paradise. This is series 10 True Affair Stories from Hawaii. Watch until the very last moment, because every truth revealed leaves behind a ghost that never fades. The waves rolled gently beneath Leilani's board, carrying her body forward, backward, as if the ocean itself was breathing. The morning sun bathed the waters of Maui in golden light, scattering glimmers like crushed diamonds across the surface. She crouched slightly, maintaining balance, her mind nearly empty but at peace, like she always felt at sea. This was her temple, her quiet, her Hawaii. She had paddled far enough from the beach that the noise of early risers setting up umbrellas and beach towels faded into silence. All she could hear now was the rhythmic hush of water against her board and the distant call of seabirds. Her long black hair was pulled into a low bun beneath her rash guard. No makeup, no jewelry, just salt, skin, and sunlight. And yet, despite the serenity of the scene, Leilani felt a strange pressure in her chest that morning. Something she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the lingering tension from last night's odd conversation with Kaikoa. Or maybe it was the way he had smiled, too quickly, too forced, when she had asked if he'd be coming with her to the beach this weekend. He had said he had to work. Again, 6 years of marriage, enough time to know a lie when it's shaped like a half smile. She exhaled sharply through her nose and laid down on the board, paddling toward a cove she liked. It was more secluded, bordered by lava rocks and shaded by ironwood trees. It also offered a clear view of a line of beachfront homes, small but luxurious, tucked just far enough back from the main beach to avoid casual tourists. Leilani wasn't spying, she wasn't even thinking about Kaikoa in that moment. But something made her pause. As she floated near the edge of the break, a movement from shore caught her eye. A door opened from one of the homes, one she had never noticed before. Painted a soft blue with white shutters. A man stepped out, tall, tanned, hair still damp, wearing the same green shorts Kaikoa always wore after his morning runs. Her heart paused. The man turned. The sun lit his profile. Square jaw, freckled shoulders, the tiny scar on his collarbone she had kissed 1,000 times. Kaikoa. She instinctively ducked behind the crest of a small wave, peeking over the edge of her board. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her mind couldn't catch up with what she was seeing. Kaikoa stepped down the porch stairs barefoot. Behind him, a woman emerged from the doorway, young, probably in her 20s, wearing nothing but one of his old oversized shirts. Her hair was unmistakably red, cascading in loose waves down her back like something out of a shampoo commercial. She followed him barefoot, laughing softly. Then, Leilani saw it. Not just a casual touch. Not the kind of polite affection between friends or siblings. Kaikoa turned, cupped the girl's face in his hands, and kissed her, softly, gently, not with hunger, but with something worse. With tenderness. He kissed her forehead the way he used to kiss Leilani when she was tired after a long shift at the hospital. The way he would press his lips to her skin and say, "You're everything, you know that." The same man, the same gestures, just to someone else. The ocean felt cold suddenly. Her stomach turned. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. She watched as he wrapped his arm around the woman's waist, pulling her into him before they both disappeared back into the house. Leilani didn't know how long she lay on the board after that. Minutes, hours, time meant nothing. She couldn't move, couldn't even blink. Her limbs were heavy, her body paralyzed not by shock, but by betrayal. The kind that's so sudden, so alien, your body doesn't register it as real. Eventually, she paddled back to shore like a ghost. The water didn't soothe her this time. It stung. Every drop felt like truth sinking deeper into her pores. She stood on the sand, dripping and hollow. The tourists bustled around her. Someone laughed nearby. A ukulele played faintly in the distance. Life went on. But for Leilani, something had ended. She didn't cry. Not then. There was no room in her chest for tears. Only silence. Only the image of her husband in another woman's arms, framed perfectly in a morning of golden light. The ocean may keep many secrets. But this one, it gave up without mercy. Leilani from Maui would never look at the waves the same again. The days that followed blurred like salt water on glass. Leilani moved through them mechanically, brewing her coffee, folding her scrubs, driving to the hospital, but inside, she was hollow. The image of Kaikoa kissing that woman on the porch played in a continuous loop in her mind, stitched into her consciousness like a curse. The only place she found silence was beneath the surface of the ocean. And even then, the silence felt heavier. She didn't confront him, not yet. She didn't even let him know she had seen anything. When he came home Sunday night, claiming delays at the job site, she nodded and kissed his cheek, the same way she had for 6 years. The difference was, this time, she could smell another woman on him, her shampoo, floral and unfamiliar. That night, she barely slept. Her eyes stayed open long after Kaikoa's breath had deepened into sleep. Leilani stared at the ceiling, her thoughts a slow tide pulling her deeper into questions she was too afraid to answer. What else had he lied about? How long had it really been? Had he ever planned to tell her? Or was she just a placeholder in a life he had outgrown? By midweek, she made a decision. She contacted a private investigator, a retired cop named Kaleo who now specialized in discreet domestic cases. He met her at a local diner in Lahaina, away from town. "You want pictures or just confirmation?" Kaleo asked over black coffee. "Both," she replied. Her voice was quiet but steady. He nodded. "Give me 4 days." Leilani spent those days floating. Her body went to work, but her mind stayed somewhere offshore. Every text Kaikoa sent, "Working late again. Sorry babe," tightened the knot in her gut. She responded with emojis, hearts, exclamation marks. But inside, she was shrinking. On the 4th day, Kaleo called. "I've got something. Meet me." She drove to the diner again, her hands shaking as she gripped the wheel. When she arrived, Kaleo slid a small manila envelope across the table. She opened it slowly. Inside were 6 photographs. In the first, Kaikoa was stepping out of the same blue beach house, holding hands with the red-haired woman. In another, he was kissing her on the neck while grilling in the yard. A third showed him helping her adjust a necklace while she smiled. Barefoot, in a sundress Leilani had never seen before. Each image was a nail in the coffin of their marriage. Kaleo didn't speak. He didn't have to. His face, weathered and lined, held only one expression: pity. Leilani nodded, tucked the envelope into her bag, and left. She didn't cry. She couldn't, not yet. That evening, Kaikoa came home with takeout and tried to kiss her. She let him. She even smiled. But when he wasn't looking, she went to the bathroom and vomited into the sink. Her body was rejecting the lie. Over the next week, she began preparing her exit silently. She spoke with a lawyer, looked at rental units near Lahaina, and made quiet arrangements at the hospital to shift her schedule. She was practical, strategic, calm, but inside, the storm was gathering. Nights were the worst. She would lie awake, staring at the fan blades on the ceiling, replaying old memories, birthdays, beach hikes, the night he proposed under the banyan tree. All those moments now felt counterfeit, rewritten. Once, she found herself standing at the edge of the pier near Pyre. Barefoot, with her phone in her hand, she thought of calling him, screaming into the receiver, demanding answers. But she didn't. She just let the wind eat her words before they were born. The dreams began soon after. Dreams of water swallowing her whole, of being pulled out to sea with no land in sight. In some dreams, she floated forever. In others, she sank, peacefully, One night, she woke up gasping, certain that the mattress beneath her had turned to waves. Kaikoa stirred beside her, oblivious, mumbling in his sleep. She looked at him for a long time, wondering how someone so familiar could feel so foreign. She thought about confronting him, about slapping the photos on the table, demanding truth, but the thought exhausted her. What would she gain? He would lie, or worse, admit it and beg. She didn't know which would hurt more. So she waited. For what? She wasn't sure. Strength, maybe, or clarity, or just the right wave to carry her out. Leilani had always believed the sea could cleanse anything. But now, even the ocean felt like it was hiding something. The place she once trusted most now mirrored her own reflection, calm on the surface, chaos underneath. Her friends began to notice she was distant. Her eyes looked heavier. Her laugh, when it came, was sharp. Too loud, like she was trying to prove she still knew how. But no one asked. They assumed work stress, burnout. She let them. Because how do you tell someone your marriage is rotting from the inside out while still smiling through dinner? The final blow came when she found a note tucked in Kaikoa's wallet while doing laundry. It wasn't from her, just a simple, sweet message. Thanks for last weekend. I still taste the sea. That night, she folded his shirts with surgical precision, smiled when he kissed her goodnight, then lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. The storm inside her was no longer forming. It was here. The night was windless, suffocating in its stillness, as Leilani drove alone along the coastal road toward the far edge of the island. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, yet her eyes were steady. The dashboard lights cast her face in hues of blue and orange, revealing a calm far too deep to be safe. It was the kind of calm that only came after something inside had already broken. She didn't bring her phone. No tracker, no GPS. She knew the way by memory, the exact turnoff near the weathered banyan tree, the winding gravel road down to the beach homes, and the fifth house on the left, a soft blue bungalow with white shutters. She had memorized its every detail. The house was dark, its windows blank, save for one faint yellow light glowing near the kitchen. Leilani parked 2 blocks away, pulled her hoodie tighter around her face, and walked the rest of the way barefoot. The sand felt cold against her feet. She wasn't here to confront. She wasn't even sure why she had come. Her mind cycled between stillness and static. But in her hand was a sealed envelope. Inside, a letter written in her neat, almost surgical script. There were no threats, no accusations, just the story of the man she had loved, the way he used to whisper dreams into her hair, the way he built a life with her, only to quietly tear it down from the inside. It was a eulogy, in a way, for the version of him that had died in her heart. Leilani crept close to the house. Through the side window, she saw her, the girl with the red hair, curled on the couch in one of Kaikoa's old shirts, asleep with a mug on the floor beside her. Her breathing was soft and even. Leilani stood there for minutes, watching the rise and fall of the girl's chest. She didn't feel anger. She felt sadness, a low, drowning sadness, not just for herself, but for the girl, too, for all of them. With care, Leilani stepped onto the porch and slid the envelope under the door. Then, as silently as she had arrived, she turned and walked back into the night. The wind picked up slightly, tousling her hair as she disappeared into the shadows. 3 days later, Maui was awash with headlines. A woman had been found dead in a rental home near the Kihei coastline. Cause of death: carbon monoxide poisoning. The gas heater had been old, improperly installed, but what caught the authorities' attention was that the windows had been shut, and there were faint signs of a recent cleaning, surfaces wiped, curtains adjusted, one small candle still burning. The girl was found alone. The neighbors said she hadn't come out for days. No one had heard any struggle, no screams, but the security camera 2 houses down had caught someone on the property the night before the estimated time of death. A woman in a gray hoodie, walking barefoot, face partially obscured, and from that angle, the porch light illuminated her profile just enough to raise suspicion. Police identified her as Leilani from a neighbor's description. She was brought in for questioning. The footage was played. The timestamp couldn't be ignored. She sat calmly in the interrogation room. Hair tied back, no makeup, hands folded. The officer across from her asked why she had gone there. Leilani met his eyes and said softly, "I went to leave a letter. That's all. I wanted her to know who he really was. I don't know, closure, maybe." "Did you go inside?" "No, I never touched the door. I just slid it under." "You're aware she was found dead shortly after?" A pause. "Yes. Do you deny any involvement in her death?" "I didn't hurt her. I went to forgive her. But maybe someone didn't want that to happen." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Someone? You think Kaikoa was involved?" She didn't answer, just stared at the water glass on the table as if it held more truth than she did. Later, when Kaikoa was brought in, he denied everything, claimed he hadn't been to the house in a week, that he had broken things off, that he'd been trying to fix his marriage. But he fumbled under pressure. His alibi didn't hold. And then there was the envelope, found inside the girl's home. Untouched. Forensics confirmed only Leilani's fingerprints. Online, the island erupted. The media feasted on it. Wife confronts mistress, death follows. The public split into two factions, one branding Leilani a cold-blooded killer, the other defending her as a woman pushed past her limit. Her mugshot went viral, calm, beautiful, empty-eyed. The letter was eventually leaked. Journalists read excerpts on morning radio. "He used to hum when he cooked." "Did he do that with you?" "He always burned the eggs. But I still said they were perfect. I wanted to believe in us so badly." The girl's family demanded justice. The DA weighed charges. But there was no direct evidence of murder, only implications. The heater had malfunctioned, no forced entry, no signs of violence, a tragic accident, or something more. Leilani was released on bail. She returned home to an empty house. Kaikoa had vanished. Friends stopped calling. The beach felt foreign. She stopped surfing. One night, alone in her kitchen, she whispered to herself, "I came to forgive." But forgiveness doesn't keep anyone alive. No one knows what really happened that night. Not fully, but from that moment on, Leilani's name was spoken in lowered voices across Maui. At bars, at luau's, on back porches lit by tiki torches. A legend born not of violence, but of silence. And the waves, as always, kept rolling in. They arrested her just after sunrise. 2 officers knocked on her door. Quiet but firm, Leilani answered in her robe. Barefoot, her hair still damp from a restless shower. She didn't ask why, she didn't resist, she simply nodded when they told her to come with them. Inside the station, she was processed like anyone else. Mugshot, fingerprints, personal items in a sealed bag. The holding cell was small, painted in faded gray. She sat on the bench with her hands in her lap, staring straight ahead. No tears, no questions. Outside, Maui was no longer quiet. Word had spread. A woman dead, a wife arrested. Talk shows speculated, forums buzzed. People whispered behind surfboards, over morning coffee, while picking mangoes at the farmer's market. Kaikoa gave his statement the same day. He told detectives that Leilani had threatened him months before. Said things like, "If you ever betray me, I'll destroy everything you love." He spoke calmly, convincingly. He looked down when he said he was scared for the other woman's safety. His words planted a seed. Detectives leaned into it. They questioned Leilani again. Why hadn't she told him about the argument? Why go to the house at night? Why alone? She answered what she could. "I wrote her a letter. I needed to say goodbye. Not to her, to the life I thought I had." They asked again if she had entered the house. She denied it, again and again. She didn't change her story. But she knew. It didn't matter. There were no fingerprints inside except hers on the letter. No signs of a break-in. No scratches. No blood. Just a malfunctioning heater and a dead woman. But the narrative had already taken shape. The media made it a feast. Beneath the aloha, wife turned widowmaker, Hawaii's Black Widow, Headlines dripped with melodrama. Leilani's face, stoic, composed, was everywhere. Some people sympathized. They said Kaikoa was a coward, that the mistress had knowingly stepped into a marriage. Others wanted justice, not just for the girl, but for the idea of consequence. Someone had to pay. Leilani's lawyer advised her to remain silent, to let the investigation unfold. But silence is a dangerous thing. It fills in the blanks however the public chooses. Each night in the cell was the same. Shadows crept across the wall like waves. She heard the cries of other women echoing through the hallway. She rarely spoke. She thought of the sea, of how it used to comfort her, of how now, even the ocean seemed suspicious. Kaikoa never visited. He never called. He moved into a condo in Lahaina and gave a quiet interview with a local podcast, painting himself as a grieving, confused man who wanted to believe the best in Leilani, but didn't know who she had become. That hurt more than the arrest. Eventually, after weeks of back and forth, the DA announced no charges would be filed. Not enough evidence. Too much ambiguity. Leilani was released. But freedom isn't always free. She returned home, but it wasn't a home anymore. Her house felt hollow. Her things, her surfboard, her wedding photos, her books, all felt like props from a life someone else had lived. People stared when she went to the market. Some crossed the street. Others offered her pity in the form of quick, meaningless words. Hang in there. Time heals. God has a plan. She wanted to scream, but she didn't. She smiled, nodded, kept walking. The beach was the hardest. The water no longer called her. It watched her, judged her. The place that had once healed her now carried a stain she couldn't scrub away. She started swimming at night. When the beach was empty, when the moon was high, she'd wade out past the shore and float in the dark, letting the cold wrap around her like a shroud. One night, a young girl recognized her in the water. "You're the one from the news," she said. "Did you really do it?" Leilani looked at her for a long moment. "Would it matter what I say?" The girl didn't answer. She just turned and ran. Months passed. Life went on. Seasons changed. Leilani moved out of the house. She rented a small apartment near the cliffs. Started volunteering at a marine rescue center. Quiet work. Work that didn't ask questions. She saw Kaikoa once at a grocery store. He froze. She didn't. She walked past him like he was seafoam, real for a moment. Then gone. Some said she was innocent. Some said she got away with murder. Some said she had snapped. No one really knew. And that's the part that lingered. Not the death, not the scandal, but the unknown. Because sometimes, the truth isn't the loudest thing in the room. Sometimes, it's the quiet that follows. And Leilani, she carried that quiet everywhere she went. If you had asked her, months later, what she remembered most, it wouldn't be the questions, or the fear, or even the arrest. It would be the sound of waves the moment she slipped the letter under that door. That stillness, that final breath. The ocean, after all, never really gives anything back. It only takes, and keeps it forever. But Leilani's story was just the first ripple. Because across the island, under swaying palm trees and the glow of tiki torches, another heart was about to break. Daniel, a devoted husband from Honolulu, thought he was attending a romantic luau with his wife. Instead, he found her publicly embracing another man, right in front of their closest friends. What followed was a moment of rage, a flash of metal, and a life taken with the very object meant to symbolize warmth and celebration. Next, discover how paradise turned to prison in the story of Daniel from Honolulu. The invitation was tucked inside the pages of a novel he hadn't finished, her way of being romantic. Or at least, he hoped that was her intention. It was a folded cream card, handwritten with her signature loopy script, "Just you and me this time. No excuses. Saturday at 7. Love, M." Daniel reread the message at least 5 times, holding it under the kitchen light like it might vanish if he blinked. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because it had been so long since she'd written anything with the word love. Marissa used to leave notes all the time. tucked in his lunchbox, on the bathroom mirror, scribbled onto receipts or napkins. And now, here it was again, a sliver of something familiar, something hopeful. He stood in front of the mirror that afternoon, razor in hand, staring at his reflection. The grays had crept in slowly, like mold in the corners of a forgotten room. But he shaved carefully, pressed his best linen shirt, picked the cologne she once said smelled like Maui on their honeymoon. He even stopped by the wine shop on Beretania Street to grab the bottle she used to love, the one with the pineapple on the label. It wasn't expensive, but it was theirs, or had been. By the time he arrived at the luau, the sun had slipped below the horizon, and the garden was alive with golden lanterns and swaying torches. Music floated through the palms, the soft strumming of a ukulele. Laughter, the gentle clink of glasses. The scent of roasted pork and plumeria hung thick in the air. Daniel took a deep breath. He stepped onto the path lined with flower petals, smiling at the soft warmth of the evening. He passed under a bamboo arch where couples took selfies. A hostess in a grass skirt handed him a lei. He took it with a shy nod, still clutching the wine bottle like a gift he wasn't sure would be received. He scanned the crowd. The tiki lights flickered across tan shoulders. Flower crowns, swaying skirts. But then, there she was. Marissa, his wife, his girl, the woman who once kissed him in a rainstorm on a dare. She stood under a string of fairy lights, her back arched in laughter. Her dress was red, floral, cinched at the waist. Her hair fell in glossy waves. But she wasn't alone. Daniel stopped walking. A man was standing beside her, taller than Daniel, maybe 30 at most, lean and fit in a floral button-down left open at the top. His arm was around Marissa's waist. Marissa didn't move, didn't push him away. Instead, she leaned in, her head tipped onto the man's shoulder like it belonged there. Daniel's smile died in his throat. He took a step back, unsure if he'd misread. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe a cousin. Maybe. Then Marissa turned slightly, just enough for their eyes to meet. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she smiled, a different smile, not cruel, not cold, just detached, like she had already rehearsed this moment in her mind. Daniel's heart stuttered. He looked down at the wine in his hand, then back at her. Marissa said something to the man, who nodded and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before walking toward the buffet. She approached Daniel slowly, her heels clicking softly on the stone path. "You came," she said. He stared at her. "You invited me." She glanced at the bottle. "Is that the pineapple wine?" "Yeah," he said, his voice cracked. "I thought it was your favorite." Marissa smiled again. It was. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Just the music and the ocean waves crashing in the distance. Daniel finally asked, "Who was that?" Marissa's gaze drifted back to the man now chatting animatedly with guests near the fire pit. "His name is Luca. He's someone I work with." Daniel swallowed. "Someone you're seeing?" She didn't answer right away, just looked at him with those eyes that once knew him so well. "I didn't invite you to hurt you," she said. I thought it was time you knew. Really knew." Daniel took a shaky breath. The wine bottle now felt like a dumb joke. A prop in the wrong play. "So this isn't for us," he said, "this whole night." Marissa looked down, then back at him. "No, Daniel, it's not." And just like that, the illusion shattered. The music didn't sound romantic anymore. It was just noise. The lights too bright, the smiles too forced. He felt naked. Guests walked past him, laughing, sipping drinks, brushing flower petals from their shoulders. None of them knew that a marriage was dying right there in the middle of paradise. He turned to leave, but Marissa touched his arm. "You deserve someone who sees you," she said. Daniel looked at her one last time. The woman he thought he'd grow old with. The woman who now looked like a stranger in a dress meant for someone else. He walked away, the bottle of wine still in his hand. Behind him, the laughter grew louder. He never noticed how cold the wind had gotten until he was already in his car, staring through the windshield at nothing. And in the rearview mirror, The glow of tiki torches flickered like tiny fires he could never put out. Daniel returned to the party not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know where else to go. He wandered back into the tiki-lit garden like a ghost, the bottle of wine now tucked beneath a table near the bar. He didn't feel drunk, he didn't feel anything. He stood near a palm tree and watched from a distance. Marissa had rejoined Luca, who was now holding her drink and feeding her a bite of roasted pineapple. She laughed with her mouth open, free and unbothered, the same laugh that used to be his favorite sound. Daniel tried to melt into the shadows, sipping from whatever cocktail was handed to him by a passing server. It tasted like sugar and gasoline. Around him, the party swelled, people swaying to music, hugging, kissing, dancing barefoot on the grass. Everyone seemed to fit perfectly, everyone but him. He found a seat at a far table under a dim string of lights. No one sat with him. He didn't mind. He stared at his empty glass, then poured another. A man he didn't know gave him a pitying nod. A woman with painted nails and too much perfume leaned over and asked, "Are you here alone?" Daniel smiled politely. Sort of. From across the lawn, he could feel the eyes. Not many, but enough. Whispers traveled faster than torchlight. Some were probably wondering why the man in the linen shirt looked like he was attending a funeral instead of a luau. Others may have pieced it together, the former couple now standing oceans apart at the same celebration. Marissa didn't acknowledge him again. Not once. She introduced Luca to others, laughing, holding his arm, resting her head on his shoulder. Daniel kept sipping. At one point, Luca gave a small speech near the fire pit, thanking everyone for supporting their team's big travel campaign. Daniel's stomach turned. So this wasn't just a party. It was a professional moment. A platform. A public claim. He stood to clear his head, walked along the edge of the garden until he reached the darker part of the venue. No more torches, just stars and the distant crash of waves. That's when he heard them. Marissa and Luca. They were standing near the fence that overlooked the shoreline. Voices low but clear in the open night air. "You handled that well," Luca said. "It had to happen sometime." Marissa replied, "I just thought he'd leave quietly. He looks wrecked. He doesn't understand. He never did." "Not really." Luca laughed. "You sure he won't cause a scene?" A pause. "He won't. That's not who he is. He'll just go home and write about it in a journal or something." "You're cold." "No," Marissa said. "I'm free." Daniel didn't move. His heart was pounding now. But not from pain, something else. Something darker, like hearing your eulogy before you're dead. He turned and walked back into the party. His jaw clenched. He poured another drink, then another. He didn't remember how many. At some point, a limbo contest started near the dance floor. Someone spilled beer on his shoe. A ukulele player switched to a fast island tune and people clapped offbeat. It all blurred. Daniel stared at Marissa and Luca dancing, not even hiding it now. She kissed him fully under the fairy lights. Someone whistled. Someone cheered. Daniel stepped backward, bumping into a table. A plate shattered. People turned to look. He mumbled something and walked toward the restroom. Inside, he gripped the edge of the sink and looked at himself. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His pupils dilated. The man in the mirror looked like a stranger who'd lost something he didn't even know he was holding. The door opened. A young man walked in, glanced at Daniel, then turned away. "You okay, bro?" Daniel didn't answer. He washed his face, splashed cold water on his neck, tried to breathe. Outside, the party raged on. He stepped back into the garden. Music thumped like a heartbeat. Somewhere nearby, fire dances were performing. Marissa clapped, glowing. Daniel stood in the shadows and watched it all like it was a play. And he was the forgotten extra. Then he saw her lean into Luca again. And he heard her say it, clear, cruel, sweet as poison. "You're the real luau tonight." Daniel froze. He didn't remember walking, or reaching for the decorative torch stand shaped like an iron candle. But suddenly, it was in his hand. And his steps moved him forward. The music didn't stop, but soon, something else would. The lights dimmed around the garden as the fire dances bowed and retreated into the shadows. Tiki torches flickered lower, and someone lit candles on each of the tables, casting the whole luau in an amber glow. The atmosphere shifted, intimate, romantic, expectant. Daniel sat in a corner beneath a cluster of ferns. Nearly invisible, the candlelight made everything look dreamlike, unreal. He rested his hands in his lap, fingers twitching slightly. Across the lawn, Luca and Marissa stepped into the center of the space where a hula dancer had just performed. Someone began clapping, calling for couples to join the dance floor. A gentle rhythm rose, the strumming of strings, the soft beat of drums. Marissa pulled Luca in, her hips already moving with practiced sway. Daniel watched in silence. The crowd circled around them, laughing, sipping from coconuts, swaying along. Marissa's red dress shimmered with each motion. Her bare feet brushed the grass as she leaned into Luca, cheek to cheek, their hands linked in a way that once belonged to Daniel. He didn't blink. Then, somewhere behind him, someone joked loud enough for half the party to hear, "Looks like we're at a wedding nobody told us about." The crowd laughed. A few guests whistled and clapped louder. Daniel stood. He moved without urgency, his body on autopilot. He passed the bar, his eyes sweeping over the half-empty bottles, the lemon slices drying on the counter. He walked by couples holding each other, by friends taking selfies, by old uncles snoring in beach chairs. No one stopped him. At his table, he reached for the centerpiece, a heavy iron candle stand shaped like a torch. Decorative and unused until now. It was heavier than it looked. He gripped it with both hands, his breath catching in his throat. He turned. Marissa spun under Luca's arm. Her hair lifted with the movement. The music quickened. Daniel walked across the lawn, each step echoing in his head like a heartbeat. He didn't yell, didn't cry. He walked straight into the circle. Just as Marissa turned again, she saw him. Her face fell, but before anyone could speak, before the music could catch up, Daniel swung. The iron candle crashed into Luca's skull with a sickening crunch. A scream pierced the air. Marissa lunged forward, catching Luca as he crumpled. Guests gasped, scattered. Someone dropped a drink. Another began yelling for help. The music stopped mid-note. Daniel stood over them, breathing hard, the iron candle now slick in his hands. Luca twitched once. Blood pooled quickly on the grass. Marissa looked up at him, her face painted in shock and horror. She tried to speak, but no words came. Her hands pressed against Luca's wound, trembling. Daniel didn't move. His eyes were blank, distant, as if the act had not been his, but something that had borrowed his body to be born. The first man to reach them was the bartender. He tackled Daniel to the ground, the iron torch rolling from his hand. Two other guests joined, pinning him down. Daniel didn't resist. He just whispered, barely audible. He was the real luau. Screams turned to sirens. Someone called 911. Someone else tried CPR. But Luca was already gone. The lights, the laughter, the dancing, all vanished in a single swing. Marissa sat beside the body of the man she chose, rocking slightly, muttering, "No, no, no," as blood seeped into her dress. Police arrived within minutes. They cuffed Daniel, who said nothing. He didn't look at Marissa, didn't look at the body, only at his own hands, shaking, wet, and foreign. One of the guests, filming with his phone, asked loudly, "Why do you do it, man?" Daniel didn't answer. Later, at the station, under fluorescent lights and the smell of antiseptic, Daniel sat in silence. The detective across from him read off the charges. He nodded once, then again, then said, "You know what breaks a man? Watching himself vanish in front of the person he loves." His mugshot made the local paper the next morning. Bloodshot eyes, disheveled hair, linen shirt stained. The headline read, "Jealous rage turns luau into murder scene." Marissa never visited him, never wrote, never called. At trial, she testified calmly, tearfully. She told the jury she never meant to hurt Daniel, that he had seemed fine, quiet, gentle, that she hadn't seen it coming. The prosecutor asked her what Luca meant to her. She said, "He made me feel alive again." Daniel was sentenced to 12 years in prison. As the verdict was read, he turned to look at the spectators. No one met his gaze. Except one woman, older, perhaps a stranger, who looked at him not with horror, but with pity. He nodded at her, and was led away. The cell was cold and gray, lit by a narrow slit of morning light that never reached the corners. Daniel sat on the bottom bunk, fingers laced, elbows on knees. He hadn't slept much, he hadn't really eaten. Time moved differently here, less like a clock and more like a tide. Surging and pulling and never truly going anywhere. He kept replaying the moment. Not the strike, not the blood, but the second before, the silence. The breath he took, the way Marissa's eyes changed when she saw him. It haunted him, not the act, but the awareness of what it made him become. When the guard called his name, he stood slowly. The handcuffs were a formality. He didn't fight, didn't speak. At the courthouse, cameras flashed. Journalists waited. The story had become sensation. Husband snaps at luau. Lover dead. Wife weeps. Community divided. In the holding room, an officer asked why he did it. Daniel looked down at his wrists. "I don't remember the moment it happened," he said. "I just remember that once I was loved." The trial was short. Evidence was clear. Witnesses consistent. The defense tried to plead temporary insanity, but it didn't stick. Marissa's testimony sealed it. She took the stand, her face pale and composed. "Yes, we were separated emotionally for a while," she said, "but I never expected that." Reaction. The prosecutor asked if she still loved her husband. Marissa paused. "Daniel died long before that night," she said softly. "People just didn't see it." The courtroom was silent. When the judge read the sentence, 12 years, Daniel only nodded. He turned to look at the gallery. Friends, strangers, reporters. No one held his gaze, except a janitor standing in the back, whose mop stopped mid-swipe. They shared a glance, brief, human. Back in his cell, Daniel began to write, not because he thought anyone would read it, just because he needed to put something back into the world. He wrote about the sound of a candle breaking bone. He wrote about the smell of roasted pineapple and blood. He wrote about the woman who once kissed him in the rain, and the stranger who stood in her place. Years passed. He kept a small journal beneath his mattress. Pages yellowed, edges worn. He taught other inmates how to read. Fixed broken radios. Was quiet, predictable, safe. Marissa remarried 3 years later. To a tech consultant. Destination wedding in Tahiti. Someone mailed Daniel a copy of the announcement. He didn't open it, just stared at the envelope for a long time, then flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, he would still hear the music, the soft strumming of the ukulele, the laughter, the moment before the storm, and he would wonder if there had ever been a version of that night where he simply walked away. He never got an answer. On the day of his release, 12 years to the week, the guard asked if someone was coming to pick him up. Daniel said no. He walked out in the same shirt he wore that night, now faded, loose around the shoulders. He took a bus to the edge of the island, to a place he once loved, a cliff overlooking the water, where he and Marissa used to bring cheap wine and talk about growing old. He sat on the edge until the sun went down. No tears, no speeches, just the sound of waves, always there, always crashing, always pulling pieces of him away. Daniel never returned to the city. No one saw him after that. Some say he started over on another island. Some say he jumped. But the ocean doesn't keep records. Only secrets. And this one, it kept. Daniel's story was a tragedy ignited in silence, proof that sometimes the softest men carry the loudest heartbreak. But across the waters of Oahu, on the lush, quiet island of Kauai, another storm was building. Kaiana thought her husband was away on business, until she hired a private investigator, and discovered he was sharing a hidden paradise with his ex. What followed wasn't just betrayal. It was fire, death, and a sentence that would never end. Next, witness how love turned to ashes in the case of Kiana from Kauai. The first time Jason said he was going on a work trip, Kiana barely blinked. Logistics was a messy business. Warehouse delays, overnight coordination, inspections that lasted longer than anyone predicted. Living on Kauai made these things trickier, especially when most of the island's infrastructure sat tucked between stretches of jungle and unforgiving cliffs. But the fourth time he left, still carrying the same overnight bag, still refusing to share the name of the hotel, something shifted. Kiana sat on the lanai that morning, sipping black coffee from her chipped ceramic mug. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that rarely lingered on the island. Jason kissed her forehead and said, 3 days, Southside again, you know how it is. She nodded, murmured something about safe travels. But her stomach tightened as he walked out the door. He didn't say, I love you. Kiana watched the hibiscus sway in the wind, their petals shivering slightly, and thought about how silence had grown between him, not loud, not cruel, just persistent, a quiet fog. They had been married for 10 years, together since their early 20s. She had been drawn to Jason's charm, his ambition. He made her laugh. Once, he used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while burning scrambled eggs. Now, he barely ate at home. She worked from home as a bookkeeper, handling accounts for a local produce distributor. Her days were filled with spreadsheets, invoices, and polite emails. Simple, clean, structured. But lately, her husband's schedule had become anything but. She told herself not to overthink it. People change. Work gets hard. Marriages cool. Still, the absence of detail felt intentional. Jason used to tell her everything. What kind of room he stayed in, what snacks the hotel offered, how the front desk clerk mispronounced his last name. Now, nothing. She brought it up once, casually, while folding laundry. You're always down south these days, she said. Jason didn't look up from his phone. That's where the client is. They're expanding operations near Poipu. Kiana folded one of his shirts. Which hotel this time? He glanced up, blinked, then smiled. Does it matter? She let it drop. But her gut didn't. The call came 2 days later. Her friend Lehua, a freelance photographer, had just wrapped a shoot near the Poipu beach resort. I didn't want to assume, Lehua said over the phone. But I thought you should know. I saw Jason. Kiana's heart slowed. Lehua continued. Careful, he was with a woman. Blonde, not local. They looked close. Kiana thanked her, hung up, and sat very still. She wasn't angry, not immediately, just disoriented. She opened her laptop and stared at the spreadsheet she had been working on. Numbers blurred, columns twisted. Her hands trembled slightly over the keys. Blonde, not local. She opened her photo archive, searched for a folder she hadn't clicked in years, before marriage. There she was, Melissa, Jason's ex, mainland-born, wild, unpredictable, with a laugh that Kiana had once heard echoing through Jason's stories like a warning siren. The woman who had left him a week before their planned engagement. The one who had found herself in San Francisco after 3 tequila-fueled years with Jason. Kiana closed the laptop. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt amplified. The ceiling fan's hum turned into white noise she couldn't silence. She replayed every small moment from the past 6 months, his late returns, sudden work trips, the way he double-locked his phone, the silence after sex. She wanted proof, not because she didn't trust her friend, but because if she was going to confront Jason, she needed evidence stronger than a whisper. The next morning, she met with a private investigator named Nainoa at a coffee shop in Kapaa. He was ex-military, mid-40s, with tired eyes and a clean notepad. She handed him a photo of Jason and a list of dates. I want to know where he stays, she said, who he's with, and when. Nainoa nodded. I'll give you facts, not assumptions. Good, she said, I'm done guessing. The next few days dragged. She kept up appearances, answered emails, did laundry, smiled at neighbors, but inside, She was an ocean churning beneath still waters. On the 5th day, Nainoa called. "Got something," he said. "You want it in person?" She met him at the same coffee shop. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were 10 photographs. Jason, holding hands with Melissa on a beach path. Jason, kissing her cheek while waiting for valet service. Jason, checking into Poipu Beach Resort under a different last name. And finally, Jason and Melissa on a private villa balcony, toasting glasses at sunset. Kaiana didn't cry. She stared at the pictures in silence. Her fingers steady. Nainoa said quietly, "I'm sorry." Kaiana shook her head. "Don't be. You gave me what I needed." She went home, made tea, and sat in the kitchen watching steam rise from her mug. She pulled out a folder and began gathering documents: marriage license, joint bank statements, tax returns. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to throw things. She was going to burn it down, but legally. That night, Jason returned. He smelled of cologne she didn't recognize. He kissed her forehead like he always did. She pretended to be half asleep. He didn't notice her eyes open in the dark hours later, staring at the ceiling. She didn't ask how his trip was, because she already knew. Each photo became its own scar. Kaiana kept the envelope from Nainoa sealed in a drawer for days. But the images were already etched into her mind. Jason and Melissa walking barefoot down the beach path at golden hour. Her fingers in his hair. His hand pressed low on her back. A birthday cake being brought out on a patio with tiki torches glowing in the background. Melissa laughing. Jason singing. He had never sung to Kaiana. Not even once. She printed copies of the photos and slipped them into plastic sleeves, one by one, then placed them into a binder she labeled Truth. There was no confrontation, no slamming doors or screaming matches. Instead, she began pulling pieces of herself out of the life they had built together. Quietly, intentionally, she started sleeping in the guest room, claiming it was for her posture. She adjusted her work hours to be home less when he was. She moved her grandmother's heirloom jewelry from the dresser to a locked box at the bank. She called her accountant. At night, she stopped brushing her teeth in their shared bathroom. She stopped using the soap Jason liked. She washed her own clothes separately. Jason didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to ask. She kept a journal hidden inside a cookbook no one had touched in years. Each night she wrote entries that started the same way. "Dear me, you already know, but here it is again." In one entry she wrote, "It's not the betrayal that hurts. It's how he makes it look easy." Another said, "I don't miss his love. I miss mine." The nights grew longer. Rain came in heavier waves, smearing the windows like tears she refused to shed. Kaiana watched the world pass by her porch with blank eyes. Her heart didn't beat faster when Jason came home. It didn't beat slower when he left again. She was numb, but not broken. She withdrew half their savings. Quietly, moved it to a new account under her maiden name. When the bank teller asked if she was sure, she smiled. Very. Jason came home one evening talking about network delays and site assessments. Kaiana nodded, served him reheated curry, and made sure to ask nothing. He didn't notice the look in her eyes was different. She watched him scroll through his phone while he ate. The light from the screen made him look younger, almost like the man she had fallen in love with. Almost. That night she walked into the backyard barefoot, let the cold grass sting her feet, and looked up at the stars. She whispered, "You don't have to burn things to leave." But sometimes they burn anyway. Then came the photos from the spa. Nainoa sent him unprompted. "Didn't know if you still wanted updates." He wrote. Kaiana clicked open the message and stared. Jason and Melissa in white robes, sipping green juice, smiling. Melissa reaching out to touch his face. Jason laughing, her hand resting on his chest. They looked like honeymooners. Kaiana closed the laptop. She didn't get angry. She went to the bedroom, pulled her suitcase from the top shelf, and packed one bag. Only clothes she had bought before she married him. Only books she had loved before she knew his name. Then she unpacked it. It wasn't time yet. She needed a clean exit. Not just for her dignity. For her safety. That week, she visited a divorce attorney in Hanalei. The office smelled like lemon and old paper. The lawyer, a woman named Ilana, listened silently as Kayana spoke for 30 uninterrupted minutes. When she finished, Ilana simply asked, "Do you have evidence?" Kayana handed her the binder labeled Truth. Ilana flipped through a few pages and nodded. "You're prepared." "I had to be." "Are you scared?" "Not yet." She left the office with a copy of the draft papers and a plan. File it while Jason's away. Have him served through the firm. Remove herself before he has a chance to twist the story. She told no one, not even Lehua. One night, a week before the filing, Jason came home early. She was in the kitchen. He walked in without knocking, a habit she once found endearing. Now it felt invasive. He smelled like hotel shampoo. "Dinner smells great," he said. She hadn't cooked. He kissed her cheek. She didn't flinch, just smiled. "You're home early." He shrugged. "Missed you." The lie floated in the air. Sour and lazy. That night, Kayana lay awake and stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly above them. Jason snored beside her, blissfully unaware. She turned to her side and whispered, "I missed me too." When he left again, she filed the paperwork, and began to wait for the fire. The morning she filed the papers, the ocean was unusually calm. Kayana stood on the courthouse steps with a manila envelope clutched to her chest, listening to the silence inside her more than anything outside. The clerk who took her documents smiled with the mechanical detachment of someone who processed broken vows for a living. "It'll be served this afternoon," the woman said, stamping the top sheet. Kayana nodded, barely hearing. Jason was still down in Poipu, supposedly finishing another round of logistics planning. Melissa would be with him. She knew. She pictured them sharing overpriced resort coffee, his phone face down between them like an offering. She walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt foreign. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She ignored it at first, assuming it was the lawyer confirming the delivery process. But it kept buzzing. She answered on the fourth ring. It was her neighbor, Ruth. "Kayana, your house. It's on fire." The words didn't land right away. "What?" I called 911. "It's bad. The back of the house. It's in flames. The fire trucks are here now." Kayana dropped her keys. "Is anyone inside?" I don't know. I just saw the smoke and ran over." The garage was open. I yelled, but no one answered. Kayana didn't remember the drive. She must have broken every speed law on the island. When she turned onto her street, all she could see was smoke rising in heavy gray ribbons. Her heart pounded in her ears. The back of the house, Jason's workspace, was fully engulfed. Firemen surrounded the perimeter, barking commands. Neighbors stood clustered on lawns, phones in hand, faces pale. She pushed through the caution tape, calling his name. A firefighter stopped her. "Mom, you need to stay back. It's not safe." "That's my house," she shouted. He nodded grimly. "We're doing everything we can. But there's someone inside." She froze. "Jason?" We pulled a woman out. She wasn't responsive. Kayana's knees buckled. She gripped the hydrant for balance. "Blonde," the firefighter added. "Mid-30s. Melissa." Time fractured. The rest of the day unfolded like someone else's life. An ambulance, a white sheet, a news crew, caution tape flapping in the breeze like forgotten prayers. Jason arrived just before dusk. Not with Melissa, alone. His car screeched to a halt. He jumped out and ran toward the front, only to be intercepted by police. "Sir, you need to stop. This is an active investigation." Jason looked wild, hair unkempt, face red, sweat already soaking through his collar. "What happened? Where is she?" "Sir, we need to speak with you downtown." Kayana watched from across the street. He didn't even see her. An officer approached her. "We'll need you to come in too." "For a statement." She nodded, her voice somewhere deep underwater. The interviews were long, methodical. Her hands shook as she recounted the timeline. "When did you last see your husband?" "This morning. He was at Poipu." "Was anyone supposed to be in the house?" No, no one. They took her phone. Asked about security cameras. One officer returned holding a thumb drive. You have outdoor cams? Yes. They nodded, then left the room. 3 hours later, they returned. Ms. Kayana, the lead detective, said, "Your husband was seen entering the property 3 hours before the fire began." She blinked. He wasn't supposed to be here. Footage shows him parking around the block, entering through the back gate. She said nothing. He was alone. 20 minutes later, another camera caught him unlocking the side door. "We believe he started the fire in his workshop." "Why?" she whispered. The detective looked grim. "We think he wanted to destroy evidence. Or make a statement." "What about her? We're not sure if she was meant to be there. Or if she walked in at the wrong time." Kayana closed her eyes. Jason was arrested that night. The island erupted in gossip. The fire, the woman, the marriage that burned down in public view. Melissa's death was ruled as homicide by smoke inhalation. Jason was charged with first-degree arson and murder. The news outlets used words like crime of passion. But Kayana knew better. This wasn't passion. It was cowardice, wrapped in gasoline. At the arraignment, Jason refused to look at her. He stood in an orange jumpsuit, jaw tight, eyes flat. She sat in the back of the courtroom, unmoving. The prosecutor read the charges. Jason's lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, but the judge wasn't moved. Bail was denied. Kayana drove home, or what was left of it. The house was blackened. The roof caved in. Her bedroom had collapsed. The wedding photo that once hung above the dresser was gone. Neighbors left flowers. She didn't light a single candle. For the first time in weeks, she slept. But when she woke, the silence was louder than ever. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature, but in spirit. Months had passed since the fire. The trial began in a flurry of media noise but settled into a slow, grim rhythm. Every day Kayana showed up, sat quietly in the same spot behind the prosecution, and listened. She didn't cry when the autopsy report was read aloud. Didn't flinch when photos of the charred hallway were shown on the projector. Didn't blink when the jury watched the security footage, Jason slipping through the back gate like a ghost with matches. The prosecution built a meticulous case: premeditation, access, motive. The defense argued for emotional instability, citing stress, mental breakdown, a moment of poor judgment. But the footage and Melissa's death spoke louder than any excuse. Kayana was called to testify. She told the truth, calm, clear, without dramatics. She didn't embellish. She didn't need to. When asked how she felt the day she filed for divorce, she answered, "Like I was finally breathing again." The room held its breath. Jason never took the stand until the sentencing phase. He stood there, thinner now, paler. The charm that once carried him like a breeze was gone. His voice cracked when he spoke. "She was a mistake," he said, speaking of Melissa, "but she was all I had left." Then he looked at Kayana. His voice dropped. "You were the only person who ever saw me clearly. And I destroyed that." Kayana didn't look up. The judge read the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Life without parole. The courtroom exhaled. Jason didn't cry. He nodded. Kayana left without looking back. She didn't speak to the reporters outside. Didn't write a statement. Didn't go home. Instead, she booked a one-way flight off the island. In her final blog post, months later, from a city where no one knew her name, she wrote, "I don't hate anyone, but I will never return to a place that tried to burn me alive. Even if I once called it home." The blog ended there. No one knew what happened to her after that. Friends said she changed her number, closed all accounts. Some say they saw her walking barefoot along a beach in New Zealand. Others think she took a new name, started over, quietly, but the house remained, burned, empty, a warning more than a memory. Tourists passed by it on the way to the beach and asked what happened. Locals said, "A man mistook fire for love." And in the silence that followed, you could still hear it. The crackle of wood, the whisper of betrayal, the cold of a place that once held warmth. Louder than screams, quieter than forgiveness. Kayana never returned to Kauai. And Kauai never quite forgot her. but just across the sea, on the Big Island, where volcanoes breathe like sleeping beasts. Another betrayal was unfolding. Noah thought his girlfriend would never leave his side, especially during an evacuation. But when the sky turned red and the ash began to fall, she ran, and didn't take him with her. Next, witness how survival can't always save you, in the story of Noah from Hilo. The sky over Hilo wasn't supposed to look like that. It was an unnatural red, thick, pulsing, like the island itself was bleeding. The sirens had begun before dawn, loud and distant, echoing through the valleys and bouncing off the ridgelines. The alerts came next, lighting up phones with a sharp tone that made the heart jolt. Mandatory evacuation. Kilauea erupting. Leave immediately. Noah stood on the porch of the small cabin he'd built with his own hands, bare feet planted on the wooden planks, staring up at the shifting cloud of ash and gas in the distance. The air already tasted different, metallic, smoky, alive with danger. Inside, Leela was supposed to be packing. She'd run back in to grab her laptop and some clothes. Noah had already thrown essentials into 2 duffel bags: food, water, tools, IDs, a folder of his art commissions. He looked back toward the door, waiting for her voice, her footsteps, anything, but the cabin was quiet. He called out, "Leela?" No response. He stepped inside. Her room was empty. The open closet looked ransacked, but not in the panicked way. In the intentional way. A few drawers hung open. Her sandals were gone. On the counter, his phone buzzed. He grabbed it, thumb trembling. One new message. "Leela. I'm sorry, I went with Kai. I'll explain later. Just go. Please be safe." His stomach turned to ice. He read it again, and again. Went with Kai. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in around him. His breath hitched. He walked out the back door, trying to make sense of it. Kai, that Kai, the one who used to show up at Leela's old job yelling. The one she called, "a ghost I buried." The one who told Noah at a farmer's market, months ago, that he was just a placeholder. Noah's hands clenched. The smoke in the air now bit at his throat. There wasn't time to fall apart. He slung both duffel bags over his shoulders and headed for the truck parked beneath the banana trees. He turned the key. The engine clicked, sputtered, then died. "Come on," he whispered, trying again. Nothing. He cursed, opened the hood. Battery connection was loose, probably from the jostling roads. He tightened it, slammed the hood shut, and tried again. The engine groaned to life. He threw the bags in the back, jumped in, and hit the gas. Half a mile down the road, traffic hit, a bottleneck of vehicles from every corner of Pune district converging toward the northern highway. People were honking, shouting, smoke drifted above the treeline. Noah sat there, hands gripping the wheel. His mind wasn't on the lava. It was on Leela. Her scent still lingered on the passenger seat. A piece of her bracelet was caught in the cup holder. He reached for his phone. Another message. "I didn't plan this. Kai just showed up. I panicked. I'm sorry." He didn't respond. The road wasn't moving. He checked the radio. Updates were chaotic. Fissures opening unexpectedly. Lava creeping faster than models predicted. Entire neighborhoods were gone. He turned off the truck. He couldn't breathe. He climbed out, took the back road home. On foot. The smoke had gotten thicker. The wind carried it into his lungs, into his eyes. His skin stung. By the time he made it back to the cabin, he could barely see. The sky was now deep orange. The ash was falling like black snow. He rushed into the house and sealed the windows with towels, duct tape. He turned on the emergency fan, then curled into a ball on the floor, clutching a wet cloth to his face. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be there. She was supposed to choose him. Noah lay there in the dark, surrounded by wood and silence. As the world outside hissed and groaned. Somewhere in the distance, the volcano growled again. He checked his phone one last time. No new messages. He turned it off, and waited. The air was getting heavier. The walls creaked under the pressure. Noah didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just listened to his own heart slow down. one beat at a time, beneath a sky that had turned against him. Alone, abandoned, while somewhere, Leela was driving away with the man who once broke her. And left Noah to be broken by fire. The first few hours were spent trying to stay alert. Noah moved from room to room, sealing cracks with towels, stuffing shirts under door frames. The ash outside was relentless now, thick like fog, clinging to every surface. He used a scarf soaked in water to breathe. But it barely helped. The power went out by nightfall. The emergency fan fell silent, leaving only the soft whistle of wind and the distant rumble of Kilauea. The walls of the cabin moaned, each creak making him flinch. He lit 2 candles, placed them on opposite ends of the room like they were guardians. He checked his phone, still no service. He checked the food supply, enough for 2, which now had to stretch for him alone. He checked the door every 30 minutes, like she might return, but she didn't, not with an apology, not with an explanation, not even with regret. As the second night approached, Noah tried to sleep, but the air was too warm, too thick. His head throbbed, his thoughts looped. Why Kai? Why now? Was this always the plan? Was I just the backup? The questions scratched at him like nails. He tried to meditate, to breathe slowly like he used to when carving. But the silence pressed harder than the heat. He began to hallucinate. It started small, the smell of her shampoo, the sound of her laughter in the hallway. Then louder, a flash of red across the room. Her voice calling his name. Noah. He stood up, stumbled toward it. Nothing there. The candle flickered violently. He backed away. The cabin felt too small. He needed air, real air. He packed a small bag, water, mask, flashlight, and opened the door. The ash hit him like a wave. Visibility was near zero. He pulled the scarf tight and walked, hands in front of him like a blind man. Branches cracked beneath his feet. The familiar trail to the stream behind their cabin was gone, swallowed by soot. He slipped once, caught himself, walked again, 10 feet, 20, 30. He collapsed. The air was a wall. Every breath scraped his throat. He crawled to a rock, slumped against it, closed his eyes. He saw them, Leela and Kai, laughing in a car. The windows rolled down, fresh air blowing through her hair. She looked happy, free. Noah opened his eyes. Darkness. He couldn't feel his fingers. He tried to stand but collapsed again. The flashlight rolled away. The trees around him groaned. Somewhere far off, a low hiss, the sound of lava approaching. He crawled back toward what he hoped was the cabin. Time warped. He thought he heard a siren. He thought he saw light. He thought he died. But he woke up on the cabin floor. Cold, damp, a towel over his chest. His body shook. His lips were cracked. He couldn't remember how he got back inside. A scraping sound. He turned his head. The door opened. 2 rescue workers in gas masks entered. "We've got him," one said. "He's alive." The world blurred. Noah was lifted, carried. He didn't resist. The light burned his eyes. He passed out again. When he woke, he was in a shelter. Oxygen tube, IV drip, white sheets. He was alive. But something inside him wasn't. Leela's voice echoed in his head. "I'll explain later." He wished she never would. Because some truths were worse than lies. And this silence, was a fire that didn't leave scars on the skin. It buried them somewhere deeper. Noah was discharged from the emergency shelter 3 days after being found. He could walk, but barely. The doctors warned him about long-term respiratory effects and the signs of acute stress disorder. They said he might have nightmares, that he might feel detached. They didn't say what to do when the person who abandoned you becomes a trending story. A week after his release, still moving slowly, Noah turned on the old laptop in the corner of the shelter. He typed in Leela's name. Just once. There she was. Her and Kai, smiling on a thumbnail for a video titled, "We Escaped the Lava, Together." He clicked. The video opened with ukulele music. Drone footage of the island. Smoke rising in the distance. Then their faces. Leela. radiant, laughing as she sat on a rock overlooking the coastline. Kai, arm around her. It was terrifying, she said, but in that moment, we realized what we meant to each other. Noah closed the laptop. His hands were shaking. He vomited in the shelter bathroom, then sat on the cold tile floor until someone knocked to check on him. 2 more weeks passed. He moved into a temporary housing unit outside Hilo. He didn't sleep well. He carved at night, faces twisted in pain, arms reaching upward. His hands bled from splinters. He didn't talk to anyone. Then one afternoon, he walked into town, just to breathe, just to see something normal. The farmer's market was bustling. Tourists everywhere, cameras out, children licking ice cream. Noah wore a hood, sunglasses. He walked slowly, aimless. Then he saw them, Leela and Kai, near a food truck, filming again. Kai was dancing badly. Leela was laughing. A young man held a gimbal-mounted camera, following them. Noah froze. His breath stopped. Everything narrowed. Leela turned. Their eyes met. She hesitated, then smiled. And that broke him. He didn't remember running, just the flash of people stepping aside. The weight of bodies trying to stop him. The sound of someone screaming. He lunged at Leela, grabbed her by the arm, shouted something he couldn't remember. Kai pushed him back. Noah punched him in the throat. Someone tackled Noah. Another person called the police. Leela was crying. Blood trickled from her lip. Kai was on the ground, coughing. Noah didn't resist. He just stood there, hands shaking, as sirens screamed in the distance. They cuffed him on the pavement. Read him his rights. Tourists filmed the whole thing. As he was led into the police car, he turned to Leela one last time. "You left me to die," he said, voice calm. She said nothing. The door slammed shut, and the last thing Noah saw before the car pulled away was a small girl holding a phone, whispering to her mother, "Is he the guy from the volcano video?" Noah closed his eyes, and let the silence swallow him again. The courtroom was smaller than Noah expected. Just beige walls, wooden benches, and a judge who never looked up unless it was necessary. The air conditioner hummed above him like a distant storm. When his name was called, he stood with no ceremony. The charges were read: misdemeanor assault, disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct. The footage had gone viral. His face was now a meme. A man unhinged beneath a tropical sky. Half the internet called him pathetic. The other half called him a survivor. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Noah didn't apologize. He looked ahead and said, "I wasn't betrayed by love. I was left behind like dead weight in a fire." Silence followed. He was sentenced to 12 months of court-mandated therapy and community service. No prison, just time. Time to think, to rebuild, to disappear. After his release, Noah left Hilo. No goodbye. No announcement. Just gone. A few months later, people started to notice carvings showing up at coastal towns, first in Lahaina, then Hanalei, then as far as Molokai. Small wooden statues, dark, almost scorched in finish. Most featured arms outstretched, fingers reaching, mouths frozen mid-scream. One in particular drew attention, a half-buried figure, one arm clawing up from textured lava. Locals nicknamed it Ashman. Noah never signed them, but people knew. There was something in the wood. A tension, a grief, a frozen heat. Some of his pieces ended up in galleries. Others were stolen. Some just vanished into the tide, left anonymously on driftwood. Someone said they saw him in a coffee shop in Waimea. Others swore they saw him hitchhiking toward Volcanoes National Park. No one had proof, but the scars remained. Leela and Kai moved to Oahu. Their travel channels slowed, then vanished. One of their final videos was a tearful farewell. Leela spoke directly to the camera. "We didn't expect this much hate. We didn't mean for it to become that." She never said Noah's name. She didn't have to. Meanwhile, the carvings kept showing up. Some tourists began collecting them. Some burned them out of fear. But one stood alone on the cliffs outside Hana. A life-size sculpture of a man made of blackened koa wood. Kneeling, palms up, mouth closed. No plaque, No price. Just a man who looked like he'd seen fire, and never quite came back. Locals say, on some nights, when the wind is just right, the statue creaks, like it's breathing, like it remembers, and in that sound is the story of a man who was left behind and learned how to carve himself whole again. Noah's story ended not in vengeance, but in the quiet carvings of a man who learned to survive after being left behind. But on the island of Oahu, another tale was beginning, one not of abandonment, but of exposure. Malia planned the perfect sunset vow renewal. What she didn't plan was that her husband's secret lover would also be there. What followed wasn't just heartbreak. It was violence, trauma, and a moment that shattered everyone under the golden sky. Next, witness what happens when the truth isn't whispered, it's announced in front of everyone. In the story of Malia from Oahu, Waikiki light was made for lovers. That golden stretch of day when the sky softens into honey and the ocean mirrors it back like a promise. Malia stood barefoot on the lanai of her cousin's beachside home, holding a folder thick with printed invitations. 10 years of marriage. 10 years since she said yes to Keone. And now, they would say yes again. The vow renewal ceremony had been her idea. Not because things were falling apart. Not because she needed a reset. But because everything felt full, stable, quiet. She wanted to mark it. Remind themselves of what they had built. Keone agreed with enthusiasm, the same way he always did when events were involved. He was in the wedding business himself, running logistics for venues and beach ceremonies. He knew how to make a moment look like forever. That was part of what made him attractive. Even now, he was polished, magnetic, the kind of man who remembered candle scents and the names of bartenders. Malia was the opposite, steady, grounded, a second-grade teacher with soft eyes and a voice that could bring down a room full of sugar-high 7-year-olds. They made sense, once. Now, as the sun melted across the Pacific, Malia sat with her laptop open on the kitchen counter, sorting through photos for the ceremony's backdrop. She had spent hours selecting the perfect beach shots from their wedding, him in a white shirt and Lei, her in a silk gown with plumeria tucked into her braid. She clicked open a folder titled, Keone's Camera. He had asked her to help pull a few candid photos for the slideshow. Something recent, casual, romantic. Her cursor hovered over a batch labeled, Misk. Inside were thumbnails of sunsets, wine glasses, hotel lobbies, and one screenshot. She clicked. It was a text thread. Between Keone and Tasha. Tasha. She hadn't heard that name out loud in nearly a year. Once her best friend, now just a memory she kept shelved in a box marked, Do Not Open. The message was recent, just 2 days old. Tasha, we just need to act normal. Like we always do. Don't forget she's a teacher, she reads people. Keone, I won't mess it up. We've gotten this far, it's just one more night. Tasha, I'm not hiding who I am anymore. You said this would end after the renewal. Malia's breath caught. Her heart didn't race, it slowed. The room seemed to recede around her. Not screaming, not panic, just the sharp sound of a boundary snapping inside her. She closed the folder, looked around the empty house. Outside, waves brushed the shore like nothing had changed. Inside, Malia sat perfectly still, holding the laptop like it might bite her. Tasha, who had stood beside her on her wedding day, who cried during the vows, who gave a toast that made Keone's mother tear up. Tasha, who vanished after a falling out no one ever fully explained. Now she knew why. Malia closed the laptop. She stood, walked to the mirror, and looked at her own reflection. The same face that had welcomed hundreds of children into her classroom. The same hands that held her husbands during the worst flu season of their lives. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and whispered to herself, let it finish. The ceremony would go on. She would wear the dress. She would smile. She would say the words. But when it came time to speak her vows, they wouldn't be what anyone expected. She picked up her phone, opened her notes app, and began typing, not a confession, a reckoning. The next day, she confirmed the floral arrangements. She called the DJ. She ordered a custom photo album with alternating pages, one of their wedding memories. The next of the screenshots she had saved. Page by page, moment by moment, a love story, and the evidence that ended it. She had it bound in white leather. The cover embossed with gold, 10 years of us. On the morning of the ceremony, she kissed Keone on the cheek and told him she couldn't wait to see him at sunset. And she meant it, but he didn't know why. Malia spent the next 4 days in a haze of perfection. She checked and double-checked every detail of the vow renewal as though nothing had changed, because no one could know it had. She visited the venue with the coordinator and stood barefoot in the sand, testing the angles of the sunset for lighting. "It has to fall right behind us when we kiss," she said, smiling softly. The photographer nodded in approval, unaware that the bride-to-be already knew her marriage was a performance. She ordered leis made of white orchids and yellow pakake, each strand hand-tied. She selected a playlist that moved from classical guitar to island ballads. Every note was curated, every bloom intentional, every guest a part of the play. Her mother-in-law was touched by her effort. "You're glowing," she said, hugging Malia tightly. 10 years, and still acting like newlyweds. Malia just smiled. The invitations had already gone out, but she made one small change to the digital reminder cards. A new line at the bottom, "Come witness something unforgettable." She delivered the leather-bound album to the ceremony staff in a sealed envelope labeled, "Play this during bride's speech." The DJ didn't question it. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow and deliberate. Keone was beside her, snoring gently, arm across her waist. She could feel the heat of his skin, and it made her cold. She didn't sleep. She watched the sky turn dark, then gray, then pale with dawn. She got up and went for a run, barefoot along the beach, until her lungs burned and her calves trembled. Then she sat on the rocks and wrote in her journal, "They think I am soft. They forget that silence can be a weapon." When she returned home, Keone handed her a smoothie like nothing was wrong. "One more day," he said, eyes bright, "then we say it all again." Malia smiled. "Yes, all of it." She went to her fitting alone. The dress still fit perfectly. It was a sleek, white silk gown with a halter neckline and a long slit at the side. Understated, strong. The seamstress admired her. "Your husband is lucky." Malia didn't correct her. That afternoon, she rehearsed her speech again, practicing where her hands would be, how long to pause, where to let her voice catch. Keone texted her a photo from the setup, Tasha, smiling in the background, holding a clipboard. Malia stared at the screen, then turned it over. She pulled out her printed copy of the speech. The vows, the real ones, not the ones he expected. The morning of the ceremony, Malia did her own makeup. Soft gold tones, clean liner, lips the color of hibiscus. Her sister helped her into the dress. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Malia shook her head. "Not anymore." She arrived at the venue just as the sky began to soften. Guests were seated on bamboo chairs. The aisle was lined with petals. Musicians played soft slack-key guitar. Keone stood at the altar, tan and beaming. His mother wiped tears already. Tasha hovered off to the side in a beige dress, demure. Forgettable. Malia walked down the aisle, barefoot in the sand, holding a bouquet of white ginger and red anthuriums. Everyone stood. She smiled like a woman deeply in love. And no one knew the truth. Not yet. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke of enduring love, shared journeys, the poetry of second chances. Keone delivered his vows first. Voice steady, filled with practiced sincerity. Malia nodded through them. Then the officiant turned to her. She reached behind her and pulled the white leather album from a table. She didn't look at Keone. 10 years ago, she began, I made vows that meant everything to me. And today, I'm still making a vow. A different one. She opened the album. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Page 1. A wedding photo. Page 2. A screenshot. Page 3. A honeymoon photo. Page 4. Another message. And so it continued. A love story in pairs. One real, one false. Tasha turned pale. Keone stepped forward, reaching out. Malia. She stepped back. You made your choices, she said, voice firm. I'm just giving him a frame. The guests were stunned. Some whispered. Some turned to leave. A few pulled out phones. The sky behind them flared orange. Malia closed the album. Then she smiled for the camera. The perfect picture. But the story was burning underneath it. The moment after Malia closed the album, the ceremony fell into a silence so sharp it could have sliced the waves behind them. The only sound was the rustling of orchids in the breeze. Keone stood there, frozen. Tasha's face flushed deep red. Then pale, then ghost white. She turned on her heel and walked away without a word, heels sinking into the sand as she passed stunned guests, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Malia didn't move. She kept the album cradled in her arms like it was a bouquet made of bone. Then, from the third row, a loud, incredulous laugh. Finally, someone muttered. It was Malia's older brother, Kainoa, the one who had never liked Keone, never trusted the way he smiled too easily, laughed too loud. Keone whipped his head toward him, jaw clenched. You think this is funny? Kainoa stood. I think it's overdue. The murmur of the crowd thickened. A phone camera went up. Then another. Keone's eyes flared. This is private, he snapped. But it wasn't, not anymore. Malia stepped back, letting the scene unfold like a wave she had seen coming miles away. Keone reached for the album. Give me that, he hissed. Malia didn't hand it over. She simply turned it, slowly, and held it out for the front row to see. Keone lunged. Kainoa stepped between them. Touch her, he said, and you'll answer to me. Keone looked around, at the guests, at the musicians who had stopped playing, at the lens of a phone pointed directly at him, and something in him snapped. He grabbed the album from Malia's hands and hurled it toward the ocean. It landed short, pages fanning open on the wet sand like feathers from a broken bird. Then he turned back toward her, chest heaving. You planned this? Malia didn't answer. Her silence roared louder than any confession. Keone stepped forward again, and Kainoa moved to block him once more. But in the shuffle, a guest, an older man, one of Keone's longtime clients, stumbled while trying to move away from the chaos. He slipped on a patch of loose petals, struck his head on the corner of the ceremonial arch, and collapsed. Someone screamed. A young woman rushed to his side. He's not breathing. Everything dissolved. The officiant dropped the microphone. Keone backed away, hands up, stunned. Malia knelt next to the fallen guest, checking for a pulse. Sirens came fast. Someone had already called 911. Paramedics arrived. Guests were ushered aside. Keone stood off to the side, shirt now untucked, hands trembling. Tasha was gone. Malia gave a statement to the police. Calm, clear. She didn't cry, not even when they pronounced the man dead at the scene. Not even when Keone, now shaking, tried to approach her, only to be held back by an officer. You did this, he said, barely a whisper. No, she replied. You did. They took him in for questioning. The beach was cleared, decorations pulled down, flowers trampled. The sea swallowed the album whole. But not the story. That would live forever. On every phone, in every whisper, through every breath of wind that carried the sound of a ceremony turned into an inquest. Malia went home barefoot, alone, and slept for the first time in 5 nights. The newspapers called it an accident. The legal system called it involuntary manslaughter. Keone was indicted 3 weeks after the ceremony turned tragedy. He wasn't charged with murder, but with reckless conduct contributing to a fatality. The footage, dozens of angles, viral within hours, showed a man unraveling in the middle of a vow renewal. And a guest paying the ultimate price. He pled no contest. He received a suspended sentence and 5 years of probation, community service, court-mandated anger management. But his business was gone. Vendors blacklisted him. Clients disappeared. Tasha, she moved to the mainland, deleted her social media, and left behind a whisper trail of shame. Malia never showed up in court again after the custody hearing. She won full custody of their 8-year-old son, Nico, and received a financial settlement from Keone's liquidation. But there was no victory. Because Malia no longer slept through the night. She had panic attacks when she heard waves. She stopped teaching. The school offered her extended leave. Then a quiet resignation. She couldn't walk past the wedding aisle decorations at Target. Couldn't hear guitar covers of love songs without her chest tightening. Her therapist diagnosed her with PTSD. Not from the betrayal. From the moment she watched someone die because her truth set fire to a lie. She left Oahu 6 months later. Moved to a small town on Lanai. A quiet place with fewer beaches and no event venues. She rented a 1-bedroom above a dive shop and began sculpting again, something she hadn't done since college. Eventually, she opened a small online store. She called it Not for Vows. She sold handmade keepsakes, driftwood centerpieces, shell ornaments, dried flower bundles. The irony wasn't lost on her. People ordered them for weddings. She packaged them with care. But she never attended a single event. If customers asked for a note to be added, she wrote it in perfect script. If they requested a photo of her for social media, she politely declined. Her pieces became known for their quiet beauty. Her name never trended again. Nico visited during the summers. He didn't ask about the ceremony. Children remember what they need to, and forget what they must. He called her brave. She called him her reason. On the 1-year anniversary, Malia walked to the edge of a cliffside park and released a single page from her journal. It read, "Truth is not a blade. It is a flame, and sometimes, it burns everything, even the one who lit it." The wind carried it out to sea. And with it, maybe, a little bit of the weight. She still couldn't hear the ocean without flinching. But she learned to breathe through it. To hold her silence not as a burden, but as a shelter. And when a new couple reached out, asking for something elegant and lasting for their wedding altar, she crafted it slowly, without emotion, without memory, just wood, and light, and her hands. That was enough. Malia never remarried. She never needed to. But stories of betrayal don't always end in silence. Sometimes, they begin with something as small as a tattoo. In Lahaina, Jonah thought he saw his wife's unique tattoo on the back of a passing tourist. What he discovered wasn't infidelity. It was a criminal network. Next, witness how love turned into evidence, and how a husband became a whistleblower, in the story of Jonah from Lahaina. The tattoo wasn't supposed to exist anywhere else. Jonah had designed it himself. On a quiet night in their Lahaina apartment, pen gliding over tracing paper. Inspired by the lines of Lina's spine as she slept beside him. A fusion of traditional Polynesian patterns and modern minimalism. It curled delicately from shoulder to mid-back, symbolizing resilience and rebirth. It was never posted online, never offered to another client. It was hers, only hers. So when he saw it again, on a complete stranger, his world stopped. It was just past 7 p.m., the light low and golden. The air thick with salt and music drifting from a beachfront bar. Jonah had just locked up his shop, a small but respected studio tucked behind a banyan tree near Front Street. He took the long way home, walking barefoot along the path skirting the shore, the sand cool beneath his feet. That's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, blonde hair damp from the ocean, wearing a sarong knotted high above her waist. She was laughing nervously with 2 men, both older, both sharply dressed, both watching her a little too closely. And on her back, exposed just enough by the tilt of her wrap, was the tattoo. Jonah froze. It wasn't a copy, it wasn't similar, it was exact. Every line, every curve, even the subtle asymmetry he'd intentionally included so it felt more organic. He stepped closer, trying not to stare. The girl turned her head slightly, just enough for Jonah to see her profile. She wasn't Hawaiian, her accent was foreign when she spoke. And her laughter, it didn't reach her eyes. He didn't approach. Something about the way she moved, guarded, cautious, warned him to stay back. But the tattoo, that tattoo. He walked home slower than usual, heart pounding. Lena was already there, sitting cross-legged on the lanai, sipping red wine and scrolling through her tablet. She looked up and smiled. "Long day?" Jonah nodded. "A weird one." She tilted her head. "Something happened?" He hesitated. "Just ran into someone I thought I recognized. Here in Lahaina. Must have been a tourist." "Maybe." She stood, came over, kissed his cheek. "You smell like ink and seawater." He laughed softly, but his mind was still back on the beach. That night, he barely slept. The image of the tattoo looped in his mind. Every line he'd drawn, every promise they'd made the day he inked it onto Lina's skin. She'd cried, said it felt like she was reclaiming her body. She'd said it was sacred. He believed her, so how did someone else end up wearing it? The next day, he returned to the beach, walked the stretch at the same hour, hoping to see the girl again. She wasn't there, neither were the men. He checked the hotels nearby, pretended to be scouting for a mural commission. Nothing. By the third evening, he considered letting it go. Until he saw her again, this time alone. She was sitting on a bench, facing the water, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Her eyes darted, her foot tapped fast against the sand. Jonah sat down on the opposite end of the bench. "Hey," she turned, startled. "Sorry," he said quickly, I think I've seen you before." Her voice cracked slightly. "Yeah, maybe, I don't know." He gestured gently toward her back. "Your tattoo. It's beautiful. Did you get it here?" She froze. "Why?" "No reason. I'm a tattoo artist." It looked familiar, that's all. She looked away. "I don't want to talk about it." He nodded, letting silence settle. After a long pause, she whispered, "I didn't ask for it." His chest tightened. She stood quickly. "Don't follow me." "I won't." She walked off, fast, blending into the early evening crowd. Jonah sat there a long time, staring at the waves. That wasn't a design someone could steal from an image. That was transferred, duplicated, and if she didn't ask for it, then someone had given it to her. Someone who had access to the original design. Someone like Lena. He walked home slowly, every step heavier. When he entered the apartment, Lena was cooking. The scent of garlic and butter filled the air. She hummed along with the radio. "Hey babe," she said cheerfully. "You okay?" Jonah looked at her, really looked. Her skin, her eyes, the tattoo he gave her, hidden beneath her tank top. He forced a smile. "Just tired." He kissed her cheek and excused himself to shower. Under the spray, he let the water pound against the back of his neck. He wasn't tired. He was awake now, wide awake, and the woman sleeping next to him each night might not be the woman he thought she was. Jonah started with the obvious. He couldn't ask Lena outright. Not yet. He needed to be sure. So he began watching, quietly, carefully. Her routine was simple, supposedly. Morning yoga, a smoothie, occasional errands downtown, browsing shops, visiting the florist. But sometimes, just sometimes, she didn't come home when she said she would. An extra hour here, a late text there. One evening, she said she was going to meet a friend for drinks. Jonah followed her from a distance, heart pounding like it hadn't since he was a teenager. She didn't go to the bar she said she would. She went to a gated condo unit on the far side of Lahaina. She buzzed herself in. He waited, for 2 hours. When she left, her hair was down, her dress looked slightly rumpled. She walked like someone who wasn't in a rush, because no one was expecting her. Jonah took photos from across the street. License plates, building numbers. The next morning, while Lena slept in, he checked her laptop. He knew her password. He told himself it was justified. The browser history was clean, too clean. But the bookmarks told a story. Encrypted file lockers, anonymous payment platforms, burner email accounts, and then, a name, Mackay Wellness and Retreat Services. The website was beautifully designed. Tropical, gentle, massage, wellness, companionship, discreet, premium clients only. He clicked through slowly. There were no photos of employees. Just philosophy, testimonials, and a booking form with rates in the thousands. He copied everything. Later that day, He returned to the beach and waited. It took 2 days, but she came back, the girl with his tattoo. This time, she wasn't alone. She saw him first. "You again," she whispered, barely audible. "Why are you following me? I need to talk to you," Jonah said. "Please." She looked around, her jaw clenched. Then she nodded toward a quiet corner of the beach. They sat in the shade of a rental hut. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I just need to understand. That tattoo, I made it. It was for my wife." She looked down. Her hands trembled. "I didn't want it," she said. "She said it was branding. Said it meant I was under her protection." Jonah's blood turned cold. "She? Lena, that's her name, right?" He nodded slowly. "She said if I left, someone would come after me. That she was keeping me safe from worse people." Jonah's throat was dry. "Were there others?" She nodded. "At least 10. We all had tattoos. Variations of yours, I guess. Some had hers." He felt like vomiting. Can I ask your name?" She hesitated. "It's not the one on my passport. But you can call me Harper." "Harper, do you want to get out?" "I've been trying," she said, "but it's complicated. They have cameras. Lena isn't the top. She's just higher than most." Jonah stared at the ocean. "Do you trust me?" Harper hesitated. "I don't trust anyone, but you looked shocked." "Most people don't look shocked anymore." He wrote down his number. "A burner phone. If you ever feel safe enough, call me. I want to help." She nodded, then left. That night, Jonah didn't sleep. He started digging deep. He mapped every location Lena had visited in the last 6 months. Tracked payment trails. Found 2 more shell companies linked to her email. He cross-referenced photos from her phone backup. Found multiple images of women, always blurred faces. Always taken in what looked like upscale rentals. Always some version of that same look. Distant. Dressed up. Almost posed. He downloaded everything. Stored it on an external drive. Printed backups. Labeled folders. By the 3rd night, his fingers ached. His eyes stung. But the puzzle was coming together. Lena wasn't just unfaithful. She was complicit. And possibly dangerous. He considered confronting her. Telling her he knew. Asking why. But instead, he scheduled a meeting with someone he never thought he'd call. An old client. Now working in federal law enforcement. The email was short. "We need to talk. Not about tattoos. About something bigger." Jonah hit send. And closed his laptop with shaking hands. The agent's name was Hale. Ex-military. Now with Homeland Security. Jonah remembered tattooing his sleeve 5 years ago. An eagle wrapped in storm clouds. The man hadn't flinched once during the 6-hour session. Now he sat across from Jonah in a diner in Wailuku, sipping coffee like he had all the time in the world. "You're sure about this?" Hale asked. Jonah slid the drive across the table. "I'm not sure about anything anymore. Except that I can't ignore it." Hale inserted the drive into his secure laptop. His face hardened as he scrolled. "This is bigger than you know," Hale muttered. "We've had our eyes on Mackay Wellness for 2 years. But no name, no leverage. This changes everything." Jonah felt numb. "She's my wife." Hale closed the laptop. "And she's a gatekeeper, possibly a recruiter. But with this, we can move." Within 72 hours, a task force assembled. Discreet, federal, multi-agency. Jonah was briefed and then pulled from his home. Lena thought he was on a last-minute tattoo convention trip in Oahu. He kissed her forehead before he left. The agents wired him for one final meet. Jonah arranged to see Lena at the seaside rental she managed. She was prepping for a VIP session. No names. Always cash. She wore white linen and that effortless glow that used to make him believe in forever. She opened the door, smiling. "Thought you were gone till Tuesday." Jonah stepped in, voice steady. "Wanted to surprise you." She poured wine, talked about their future. He nodded, played along, while agents listened from 2 floors down. When she went to the back room to take a call, he excused himself, stepped outside, and texted one word, "Now." What followed happened fast. The takedown team moved like a shadow. Silent entry, no alarms. 2 arrests, one woman crying in the bathroom, another trying to climb out a window. Lena froze mid-call. Jonah stood by as she was cuffed. Her eyes locked on his. "You set me up," she whispered. "No," he said. "You did that yourself." She didn't struggle, didn't cry, just turned her head as they led her out. Jonah was escorted separately. The media never caught wind. The operation stretched across 3 more islands and 2 mainland states. 28 women rescued, 12 arrests, 4 international warrants issued, and Jonah, once just a tattoo artist, was now listed as an unnamed federal witness. Relocated, new identity. He left behind the shop, the beach, the life he built with ink and faith. The last time he saw Lena was in a courtroom, behind glass. She didn't look at him. She pled guilty, sentenced to 25 years. Afterward, Hale met him one final time. "You did good," he said. Jonah just nodded. "I still don't know who she really was. Maybe no one does." He moved inland, to a place where the ocean couldn't reach him. Set up a new studio under a different name. No portraits, no back tattoos, and never, never, another design meant for love. He learned to live in silence, to work with his head down. Sometimes, Harper called. She was safe now, studying, healing. She never asked for details. She just said, "Thank you," and Jonah, for once, didn't say anything back. There was nothing left to say. Only a memory branded deep inside him. One he'd never ink again. His name wasn't Jonah anymore. He'd chosen a quiet name. One without weight or history. Something that would pass at the DMV, at the bank, when signing a lease. It didn't matter what it was. Only that it wasn't what she once whispered after midnight. The town he lived in now was gray. Landlocked. The kind of place where nobody asked questions if you didn't ask them first. He opened a small tattoo studio near the train station. Nothing fancy. Clean lines. Pale walls. A single potted fern. He named it Ink Quiet. The only rule on the front door: no portraits. No faces. He specialized in minimalist work, tiny constellations. Knife-thin trees. Letters no taller than a thumbnail. People liked the precision. They liked how quiet he was. They said he had gentle hands. He never spoke about Hawaii. Never said the word lahaina. He kept a photo in a drawer. Face down. It wasn't of Lena. It was of the ocean. A horizon swallowed in orange fire. When clients asked why he didn't do faces, he smiled without humor. Because faces change. There were nights he dreamed of her. Not the woman in handcuffs. The other one. The one who laughed with wine in her hand. Who danced barefoot to no music. Who told him he made her feel real. He didn't trust those memories anymore. They felt staged, scripted, performed. But they still hurt. He was safe now. On paper, he didn't exist. The government had erased Jonah. What remained was a man who knew how to build a life out of lines and silence. Sometimes Harper texted. Brief messages. Updates. She had changed her name too. She was teaching art classes now. Working with survivors. She never asked where he was. She just wrote things like, "I planted jasmine today. Thought you'd like that. Do you still draw? Hope you're breathing." And he always replied, "Still breathing." Once, she asked, "Do you hate her?" He stared at the screen a long time. Then wrote, "No, just the part of me that believed her." He deleted it. Didn't send anything. Some truths were too sharp to release. On the 1-year anniversary of the arrest, he closed the shop early and drove 2 hours to a lake that reminded him of home. He sat on the shore until dusk. Sketched the water, not to remember, but to forget. When a woman passed by walking her dog, she nodded politely and asked if he was new in town. He nodded. Just passing through, he said, but he wasn't. He was staying, rooting, quietly becoming someone else. And if someday someone asked him if he had ever been in love, he might say, "Yes, but I mistook a tattoo for a promise." Then he'd return to his work. Unseen, unnamed, a man who once had a name, but no longer needed it. Jonah vanished into silence. But not all betrayals stay in the dark. Some explode, live, viral, and irreversible. In Waikiki, a cheerful TikTok dance video went viral. But behind the smiling faces and synchronized moves was a husband with 2 lives, and one wife who didn't know the camera was rolling. What happened next didn't just break a marriage. It shattered a woman, in front of the entire world. Next, uncover the devastating truth behind a digital betrayal in the story of Alana from Waikiki. A TikTok dance revealed her husband's double life. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. Alana sat at her desk in the back of her classroom, red pen in hand, grading spelling quizzes while the morning sun filtered through the window blinds. Her third graders were buzzing softly at their tables, cutting construction paper and whispering about recess. It was peaceful, routine, ordinary, until Lily, 8 years old, obsessed with TikTok, came bouncing up with her iPad. "Miss Alana, is this your husband?" she asked with the innocent curiosity only a child could weaponize. Alana smiled politely. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lily flipped the screen around. The video was only 15 seconds long. A dance challenge. Waikiki Beach, sunset golden hour. A group of adults in matching pastels moving to a trending sound. In the center, a tall man with a tribal tattoo curling over his left shoulder. Broad smile, confident steps, sunglasses. Alana's breath caught. It was Kaleo, her husband. He was supposed to be in Hilo, a corporate event. Overnight, he'd kissed her goodbye the night before, suitcase in hand, said he'd be back Thursday. But there he was, on her student's iPad, dancing, with a woman half turned toward him, barefoot, wearing a short sundress, laughing like they shared an inside joke. The caption read, "Waikiki vibes with my fave person, yellow heart, #Beach Bay, #DanceGirls, #Island couple." Alana blinked. She smiled at Lily and handed the iPad back with a soft, "Thank you." Then she excused herself to the staff restroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the sink. Her hands were shaking. She watched the video again. Slower this time. Tattoo, same. Watch, same. The way he always bit his lower lip when he danced off beat. Same. There was no question. Kaleo wasn't in Hilo. He was 20 minutes away, with someone else. And now the world knew. She opened the comments. Over 12.00 likes. People tagged their friends, dropped hearts, fire emojis. One said, "I swear I saw him last week with another girl. Same dress though." Another, "Wait, isn't he married? Lol, island men stay messy." And then the worst, "This your husband, at mrs.kaleo." Her handle, her real name. She closed the app, closed her eyes. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then the bell rang. Lunch. She straightened her cardigan, wiped her face, and walked back into her classroom like nothing had happened. But inside, something had snapped. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't storm into the street or confront anyone. She taught the rest of the day, helped a boy tie his shoe, smiled during story time, sang the cleanup song with the class. But under her skin, her nerves were fire. By 4 p.m., the video had been reposted to Instagram and Facebook. A local gossip page picked it up. "Waikiki couple takes TikTok by storm. Who are they?" A coworker texted her a screenshot. She didn't reply. At 6:30 p.m., Kaleo called. "Hey babe, long day, you good?" She stared at her phone. Did she answer? No. She needed time to think. But what was there to think about? The betrayal wasn't hidden in a drawer or a message thread. It was a trending hashtag. That night, she lay in bed scrolling through the comments, watching the looped video over and over again. Not just the dance, but the body language, the intimacy, the way he looked at the girl like she was the center of his sky. He used to look at Alana like that. Now she was just the woman who packed his lunch and ironed his shirts. The next morning, she showed up to school early. Parents avoided eye contact. One teacher patted her shoulder. Another whispered, "You okay?" She nodded. Of course she nodded. But her soul was hollow. Later that day, a student giggled behind her back. She caught the tail end of the whisper. My mom said Miss Alana got played on TikTok. She didn't respond. She just kept teaching, because that's what good teachers do. Even when their heart is bleeding out in their chest. Even when they've become a punchline in a story they never wrote. And as the sun set again over Waikiki, she watched the glow from her apartment balcony and wondered how many other screens were replaying the moment her marriage ended, on beat. In rhythm, under the eyes of thousands. She whispered to herself, maybe the algorithm knew before I did. And in a strange, cruel way, she wasn't wrong. Alana didn't say a word. Not to Kaleo, not to her colleagues, not even to her closest friend. She simply disappeared from the conversation. But the conversation didn't disappear from her. Her name was trending in ways she never imagined. Not directly, not tagged in bold letters, but in comments. In whispers. In screenshots sent behind her back. Her silence became part of the narrative. At school, she was still Miss Alana, but something had shifted. The smiles from parents grew tighter. The students more curious. A few asked questions they shouldn't have understood. Do you think people should forgive cheating? Is it true you and your husband are famous now? One afternoon, she opened her inbox to find an anonymous message. Maybe he danced because you stopped being fun. The email had no name. No reply to. It sat there in black and white. A splinter under her skin. Still, Alana didn't cry. Instead, she started watching Kaleo. He was careful, now, overly so. He answered texts faster, smiled more, bought her favorite wine without being asked. Guilt, she figured, or panic, but he never mentioned the video. She wondered if he even knew she'd seen it, or if he was simply waiting for her to bring it up. At night, while he slept, she went through his social media. He had 2 accounts, one public, full of family photos and harmless updates, and another, hidden behind a username that didn't carry his name. It was there she found the tags. Not just one video, a series. Kaleo and the same girl. Different outfits, different weekends, same beach, same flirty choreography. He wasn't having an affair. He was living another life. Her mind split into before and after. Before the video, before the lie went viral. Before she was a meme. She found the student made one by accident. It was posted in a private Discord group. Someone screenshotted it. It showed Kaleo mid-dance, with sunglasses edited to glow red, and bold white letters that read, Mr. Double Life. Below it, a GIF of Alana's face from the school website. Captioned, me trying to teach while the whole island laughs. Her hands trembled. She didn't go to work the next day. She texted the principal, claimed a stomach bug. The truth was uglier. She lay in bed all day. Phone off, blinds shut, no appetite, no music, just silence and memory. Her mind replayed every detail she missed. The extra cologne, the nights he said he was too tired to talk, the way he held his phone face down, the sudden gym membership, all signs, all ignored. She blamed herself, not for his choices, but for not seeing it, for believing she was safe, and more than anything, for caring about her image more than her truth. Because she didn't scream, because she didn't drag him online, because she let the shame fester in silence. That night, Kaleo cooked dinner, stir-fry, her favorite. She watched him move in the kitchen, barefoot, humming, like nothing had changed, like she wasn't dying inside. He looked up and smiled. You okay, babe? You've been quiet. She smiled back. Just tired. But it wasn't tiredness, it was grief, not just for the marriage, but for the version of herself that believed in it. When he kissed her forehead, she didn't flinch, but her heart had already begun to calcify. She stared at the ceiling that night, arms folded, listening to him snore. She wasn't sure if she hated him, or if she hated the silence more. 1 hour before sunrise, she opened TikTok. She typed in the girl's username, and found a live stream. They were together, again, laughing, Kaleo in boxers, shirtless, sipping from a wine glass. She called him, babe, and kissed his cheek. Alana watched in the dark. Watched until the screen blurred. Then she whispered to herself, If the world's going to watch me fall apart, they might as well hear the truth. And with that, she began to plan. Not revenge, not rage, just the truth, as loud as the lie had been. Alana hadn't posted anything in 5 days. Her social media accounts were quiet. Her phone rang only when her mother called, then stopped ringing altogether. The school had issued a formal leave of absence, citing personal health, but her name didn't leave the internet. Clips of the TikTok dance were still being reposted, recycled, mocked, remixed. Memes spread faster than explanations. And the silence became unbearable. So on a Thursday night, alone in her apartment, Alana opened the camera app. No filter, no lights, no music, just her, on her living room floor. She stared at the blinking red light for a long time before pressing go live. The viewer count rose instantly. Hundreds. Thousands. She didn't say hello, didn't greet anyone. She just looked into the lens like she was staring down a long hallway filled with ghosts. Then she spoke. I'm not here to defend myself. There's nothing to defend. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't break anything. Her voice was flat, too calm, too still. I'm just a teacher, that's it. I teach children how to spell and how to treat each other kindly. I pack their lunches when they forget. I listen when they cry. I give them stickers when they try their best. She looked down, her hand trembling slightly. One of my students showed me a video of my husband dancing with another woman. They were laughing, happy, the kind of happy I thought we shared. A pause. They showed it to me like it was funny, like I should be proud, like I should know. The comments were flooding in. OMG, it's her. She's talking about the dance video. This is so raw. But Alana wasn't reading them. She was miles away. There's a special kind of humiliation when your pain becomes content. When your heartbreak becomes a hashtag. When people you've never met decide you're a punchline. She took a breath, let it shake through her. I didn't respond because I didn't know how. I didn't scream because I wasn't allowed. Teachers don't get to fall apart in public. We have to be role models. She looked into the camera again. Direct, still not crying. But what happens when your role is a lie? Her voice cracked then. When you can't walk into a grocery store without someone whispering about you. When your students laugh at your grief and your co-workers pity you from behind coffee cups. The view count crossed 20,000. A tweet was already going viral. She's live. She's breaking. This is real. Alana's hand reached for something off screen. She held up a letter. Folded, lined paper. I wrote my resignation today. It's addressed to the principal. But it's really for the world. She opened the letter and read. To whom it may concern. This is not a resignation of duty. It's a resignation of belief. I no longer believe in the system that allowed my silence to become louder than his lies. I no longer believe I can teach children how to trust when trust was used as a mask in my own home. I no longer believe that kindness will protect you from cruelty. Or that dignity can shield you from exposure. She folded the letter, set it aside, then looked straight ahead. There's a final thing I want to say. She leaned in slightly. If a teacher has nothing left to teach, not even trust, what reason does she have to exist? The room went quiet. So did the chat. She reached off screen again. The screen jolted slightly, then froze. An error message appeared. This live stream has ended. But the internet didn't forget. Within minutes, the footage was screen recorded, uploaded, dissected. Police confirmed hours later, Alana had taken her own life. The camera was real, the moment was real, and the island of Oahu shook. Not from a natural disaster, but from the aftershock of truth delivered too late. News anchors said her name like a prayer. Parents wept, students cried. The school held a candlelight vigil. Kaleo went silent. So did the girl. TikTok removed the video, but not before it hit 1 million views. And for the first time, no one was dancing, no one was laughing, only remembering, and asking themselves, what if we had listened when she said nothing at all? Alana's name didn't fade. It etched itself into the island's bones. By morning, her livestream had been downloaded, translated, subtitled, and shared across continents. Hashtags trended globally. Hashtag Alana speaks. Listen before it's delete. Hashtag the teacher we failed. The school district released a statement. So did the mayor. So did influencers and celebrities who had never met her but now felt compelled to claim her story. But the students didn't need press releases. They had memories. One third grader cried when he saw her empty desk. Another left her a note that read, "I'll spell better because you believed I could." The candlelight vigil outside the school drew hundreds. Former students came with crumpled art projects from years past. Parents brought flowers. One father whispered, "She helped my daughter speak again." But nothing softened the silence that settled in her classroom. It was the kind of silence that no lesson plan could fix. Kaleo lost everything. Brand deals, sponsorships. His agency dropped him. His inbox flooded with death threats. He posted a single black square on Instagram. With a caption, "I'm sorry." It was taken down within hours after a barrage of comments. The girl, her name was Maya, deleted her entire online presence. She released a statement through a PR firm claiming she never knew Kaleo was married. She was 19. She said she was scared. The internet, which once laughed, now growled. But Alana was gone, and guilt had no one left to return to. A month later, someone tied a hand-painted sign to the front gates of the school. It wasn't large. It wasn't fancy, just cardboard and blue paint. She didn't die for love. She died because no one listened. No one took it down. It became a landmark. Students walked past it every day. Some touched it before entering. Some cried in front of it without knowing why. Kaleo was never charged. No law had been broken. Only a spirit. Only a truth. At the end of year assembly, her chair was left empty. Draped in white, a single sunflower placed on the seat. The principal tried to speak. Couldn't. A teacher read Alana's resignation letter aloud. The gym was silent except for breathing. And in that silence, a kind of reckoning happened. Not public, not loud, just understood. For the first time, they heard her, not her words, her absence, and it was louder than anything she could have said. Years later, a scholarship was created in her name, for students who showed strength in kindness. Not just grades, but the ache never really left. Not for the staff, not for the children, and not for the island that had watched it all unfold. Because the video faded, but the lesson didn't, and neither did the question it left behind. What does it take for us to truly hear someone, before it's too late? No one has answered it. Not yet. Maybe we're still learning. Maybe we always will be. Alana's silence shook a community. But the next betrayal didn't unfold in whispers. It ended in gunfire. In Kona, a man named Kai waited a week for the love of his life to return, only for her to show up with another man's ring on her finger. The betrayal wasn't emotional. It was legal. A secret wedding, a stolen future, and at a party meant for celebration. Kai snapped. 2 lives ended. One was sentenced to die. And Hawaii would never forget his name again. Next, witness the chilling downfall of a man pushed past the edge in Kai from Kona. His fiancée disappeared for a week, then returned wearing another man's ring. Kai didn't panic at first. When Moana said she needed space, just a few days to think, he believed her. They had been planning the wedding for months. Picking colors, fighting over music, tasting cake samples until they were both too full to argue. It felt real. It felt permanent. So when she kissed him goodbye that Monday morning, eyes a little distant, voice a little softer, he didn't question it. He just said, "Take all the time you need. I love you." She nodded, didn't say it back, but she smiled. He held on to that smile for days. The first 24 hours were calm. He kept busy at the restaurant, chopping vegetables in rhythm, taking pride in the perfect sear of the ahi. He told his co-workers she had gone to visit a cousin on the north side. No big deal. By day 2, she still hadn't answered his texts. By day 3, her phone went straight to voicemail. By day 4, he started calling her friends. Her sister, her old boss at the spa. No one had heard from her. Maybe she's at a retreat, one of them offered. She always talked about wanting to detox somewhere with no signal. That thought gave him peace. For maybe an hour. Then came day 5. Kai barely slept. He left messages everywhere, even called hospitals. Nothing. He paced the apartment, pausing only to stare at her side of the bed, neatly made. Untouched. Her favorite hoodie was still draped over the chair. He buried his face in it, trying to smell something familiar, something steady. Instead, all he found was absence. By day 6, worry gave way to something heavier. Not panic, not grief, a numbness, a quiet terror. He started remembering the things she'd said weeks before. Sometimes I feel like I'm being watched. What if this isn't the life I'm meant for? You don't really know me, Kai, not all of me. Back then, he'd brushed them off as stress. Pre-wedding nerves. Now they felt like clues. And then, on the 7th day, she returned. Just like that. No warning. He was standing in the kitchen, chopping ginger. When the door opened, he turned, dropped the knife. She looked different, not just in appearance, though her hair was curled, her skin tanner, her dress more expensive than anything she owned. No, it was the way she stood, like a stranger in her own home. And she wasn't alone. The man beside her was older, handsome, tanned in a polished kind of way. He wore loafers with no socks and smiled like he'd already won something. Moana stepped forward. Kai, she said, almost kindly. His voice came out in a whisper. Where have you been? She didn't answer. She just lifted her left hand. The ring glinted in the light. Not the one he gave her. Not the modest sapphire they picked out together in Hilo. A diamond. Large. Elegant. New. Kai stared at it. At her. At him. His name is Darren, she said. We got married. Silence. Not the kind that waits for a reply. The kind that eats through walls. Kai blinked. What? Moana took a breath. Not nervous. Not apologetic. Just rehearsed. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I met him. We connected. It was fast. It felt right. He shook his head slowly. You were gone for 7 days. She nodded. I know. You were supposed to be my wife. I was supposed to be a lot of things. And then, the line that would replay in his head for the rest of his life. I'm sorry, Kai, but this feels like fate. Fate. He didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw anything. He just stood there, one hand still wet from ginger, staring at the two of them. Moana stepped forward, reaching for his arm. He stepped back, and for the first time in their 4 years together, he didn't look at her with love. He looked through her, past her, at the man who now wore her on his arm like a prize. Darren gave a polite nod. I know this is a shock. I'm sorry for the way it happened. Kai's jaw tightened. Are you? Darren didn't answer. Moana's voice was soft. We should go. Kai didn't stop them, didn't move, didn't breathe. The door closed behind them. And he was alone again. Only this time, it wasn't absence he felt. It was erasure. Like he had been a placeholder in someone else's love story. A footnote. A false start. That night, he sat on the beach behind the restaurant, staring at the waves. His co-workers left him alone. They knew, news travels fast in small towns. He lit a cigarette. He hadn't smoked in years. The smoke curled into the night sky like a question he didn't know how to ask. What did it mean to love someone who could vanish? What did it mean to be replaced so cleanly, so quickly, so effortlessly? The sand was cold beneath him. His heart was colder, and somewhere, deep in the quiet of his mind, something began to shift. Not rage, not revenge, just the realization that love could lie, that trust could vanish in a week, and that maybe the person he loved most never really existed at all. After Moana left, Kai stopped counting days. Time unraveled. Each sunrise felt like a rumor. Each sunset, a lie. He went back to the restaurant. Not because he wanted to cook, but because chopping onions gave his hands something to do while his mind quietly collapsed. He spoke less, smiled never. His coworkers gave him space. In Kona, space is a lie. Everyone knows everything, or thinks they do. By the end of the week, The story had reached everyone. Moana, the vanishing, the return, the ring, the new husband. She moved into a high-end condo near the marina. Darren rented a Tesla. They walked together near the farmer's market, hand in hand, as if they hadn't stepped on someone's heart to get there. Kai didn't watch them, not at first. But then came the first photo, sent by a friend. Moana and Darren at the botanical garden. Her head tilted back in laughter. Kai stared at that photo for hours. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't rage. It was absence. The kind of absence that turns the world gray. He began walking the town at night. His old haunts. Her favorites. The coffee shop where she'd order passionfruit tea. The beach bench where she once cried over a movie. The bookstore where she used to read to children on Saturdays. Everywhere he looked, he saw her, and nowhere was she his. He stopped sleeping. He started checking her socials. She kept her Instagram private now. But her new life bled through others, tags, mentions, blurry cameos, a shadow in someone's brunch story, a giggle in a friend's reel. She was alive. He was just erased. He found a burner account, created a fake name, began following her circle. He told himself it wasn't stalking, just understanding. If he could understand why she left, maybe it would hurt less. But the deeper he went, the less sense it made. Darren was rich, sure, but he was bland, corporate, vacationing, not living, the kind of man who took selfies with champagne but didn't know how to cook rice. Kai watched their videos, their smiles, the way Darren placed a hand on Moana's back like he owned it. Kai remembered what that felt like. He remembered the night she told him about her father, the tremble in her voice, the way she clutched his shirt when she cried. He'd held her for hours. Did she ever tell Darren? Did it matter? He saw her wearing the necklace he gave her for their anniversary. He saw her in the sundress she swore made her feel like his forever. Now it belonged to another future. One night, Kai stood across the street from their building. It wasn't intentional. He had been walking, thinking, drowning, and then, there it was, her silhouette on the balcony, glass in hand, music low. He watched her laugh. She was beautiful in the way grief is beautiful when it no longer belongs to you. He whispered her name, but no one heard. Inside him, something hollow echoed. He went home and turned off all the lights. Sat in the dark, not crying, just existing. His apartment still smelled like her. Coconut shampoo, vanilla lotion, lip balm on the pillowcase. He opened the closet. Her old hoodie still hung there. He reached for it, held it close, but it didn't bring warmth, only weight. He dropped it, sat on the floor, and whispered again. Why him? No one answered. He began skipping shifts, then calling in. The restaurant manager left voicemails. He didn't respond. He sat by the ocean instead. Let the tide come close, but never touch. The town grew quieter around him. Or maybe he just stopped listening. He saw her once more, in person, at a cafe. She didn't see him, or pretended not to. She looked radiant. He looked ruined. He went home and broke every dish they had ever bought together. The next day, he bought new ones, all white, all plain. He didn't want memories anymore, just surfaces. He began journaling, not poetry, not emotion, just questions. What did I miss? When did it change? Who was she when I wasn't looking? No answers came, only silence. And silence, over time, becomes an accomplice to madness. Kai didn't scream, didn't confront. He simmered. And that simmer would not boil. Not yet. The invitation came in an envelope that still smelled faintly of lavender. It was from Keanu, an old friend from culinary school, turning 35, throwing a rooftop party at a downtown venue with cocktails and a live DJ. Kai almost threw it out, but something made him keep it. 3 days later, after 2 more sleepless nights, he stood in front of the mirror. He hadn't shaved. The collar of his shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red, but not from crying, from absence. He looked like a man auditioning for a role he had no lines for. Still, he went. The rooftop was full of people he vaguely knew. They greeted him with half hugs and lingering looks. Some smiled too wide, others avoided eye contact. He poured himself a drink. Something strong, something he didn't have to name. And then he saw her. Moana, in a red dress that looked like it had been sewn from every goodbye he never got. She was laughing. Next to her was Darren. Of course. Holding 2 glasses of champagne. One already half empty. His hand rested on the small of her back like it had always belonged there. Kai's breath shortened. He turned away, faced the skyline, sipped, breathed. 1, 2, 3. Someone called his name. He smiled. It cracked. He floated through the night like a ghost with unfinished business. His mind replayed moments, her head on his chest, her voice in the morning, her laugh over burnt toast. Now that laugh belonged to someone else. He poured another drink. The music got louder, the lights got warmer, and somewhere between the 3rd and 4th drink, he found himself sitting 2 tables away, close enough to hear. Darren was telling a story. Something about Paris. Moana was laughing. Her hand touched Darren's knee. Kai didn't blink. She used to do that to me. He whispered. Someone beside him asked what he said. He didn't repeat it. Instead, he stood up. The weight in his pocket reminded him of everything he had never let go of. The Glock was registered. He'd bought it years ago after a break-in near the restaurant. Hawaii laws made it hard to carry. But he had the paperwork. He hadn't touched it in months. Until that morning, his hand slipped into his jacket. He walked toward them, slow, like the ground would collapse if he moved too fast. Moana saw him first. Her smile froze. Kai? He didn't answer. Darren turned, confused. Hey, man, 1 shot. The room screamed. Darren collapsed backward into a table, blood soaking the white cloth like spilled wine. Moana screamed. People ducked, ran. Kai turned to her, hands steady, eyes empty. She was on her knees, shaking. Kai, please. He raised the gun, and fired. The second shot was quieter. Or maybe the world had gone silent. She fell next to Darren. And for a moment, the only sound was the music, still playing. Oblivious. Kai dropped the gun, lifted his hands. Security rushed him. Someone was shouting. Someone was crying. He didn't hear any of it. He was looking at the bodies. Not with rage. Not with triumph. With confusion. As if he still didn't understand what had broken inside him. As if he still believed this was the only way to make memory match reality. As if killing them would make the story make sense. But it didn't. Nothing did. As they cuffed him and read his rights, he whispered the only truth left. I just wanted it to stop hurting. The city lights blinked like they didn't care. The music finally stopped, and silence fell over Kona like nightfall over a graveyard of dreams. The headlines screamed before the sirens stopped. Double murder at rooftop party in Kona. Jealous fiancé snaps. Love triangle turns deadly. The photos went viral before his mugshot was even taken. The blood on his hands. The empty stare. The way he didn't resist. Kai was processed quietly. He didn't speak. The police report noted he had no prior criminal history. No known mental illness. No history of violence. Only one thing marked his record. A certificate of completion from a culinary institute. The courtroom was full on the first day of the trial. Reporters, strangers, families of the dead, people who loved Moana, people who admired Darren, people who wanted to know what betrayal looked like in person. Kai sat alone. No family, no friends. Even the public defender didn't touch his shoulder. His face never changed. The prosecutor painted him as cold, calculated, consumed by jealousy, said he was a danger to society, a man who executed his ex and her new husband in public. The defense tried. They called it a breakdown, showed evidence of sleeplessness, grief, dissociation. They quoted doctors. They quoted journals. They read a line from Kai's own notebook. I don't think I exist anymore. I think I became someone else. Someone who could watch her vanish and still smile at her ghost. It didn't matter. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder. sentenced to death. Hawaii hadn't executed anyone in decades. But Kai became the exception. A symbol, a warning, not of love, of rupture. When asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Kai stood. The room leaned forward. He looked straight ahead and said, "I didn't kill two people. I killed an illusion." He was taken away. No one clapped. No one cried. The courtroom emptied slowly, like something sacred had been burned down. Weeks later, a true crime podcast titled Blood at Sunset premiered. It had 2 million downloads. Moana's friends posted tributes. Darren's family sued the venue for inadequate security. Everyone had an angle. Everyone had pain. But no one had Kai. He was transferred to a high-security facility on the Big Island. No interviews allowed. No visitors. Just silence. He refused meals sometimes. Other times, he wrote. A guard found a note once. Scribbled on napkin paper. "I was a chef. I understood heat. I didn't know how to survive fire." The warden kept it. Months passed. People stopped talking about him. New stories filled the feeds. New scandals. New victims. Kai became a footnote. A name whispered like a myth. A man who mistook memory for meaning. Who looked at love and saw a mirror, and when it cracked, tried to put the glass back with blood. His name faded. But his question lingered. What do we become when the truth we built our lives on disappears? The answer never came. Some stories end with silence. This one ends with a name no one says anymore. Kai's story was loud, final, unforgettable. But not every ending has a body. Not every betrayal ends in blood. Sometimes, it's caught on camera, at a wedding, between sisters, with the whole family watching. When Lana discovered her husband's affair hidden in her own sister's wedding video, she didn't wait. She hit play. In front of everyone. What followed shattered a family. Turned legal. And then, went quiet. Too quiet. Because Lana didn't just vanish from the party. She disappeared from the island. Next is a mystery that haunts Hawaii's waters to this day. Lana from Pearl City. Her sister's wedding video exposed her own husband's affair. Lana adjusted the lens and let out a slow, steady breath. The ceremony had just ended. And the late afternoon light draped gently over the Pacific horizon behind the altar. Her younger sister, Lena, had just said, "I do," under an arch of white orchids. The guests were applauding, the music swelled, and someone popped open a bottle of champagne. But Lana only half heard the celebration. She was thinking about angles. About edits. About how to frame this moment so it would last forever. Photography wasn't just her job. It was her anchor. For the last 10 years, Lana had documented other people's memories while quietly maintaining her own. Her husband, Thomas, often joked that she lived behind the lens more than in front of it. But that was fine by her. Being behind the camera gave her clarity, distance, control. Thomas had been supportive, in that polished, dependable way of his. At 37, he managed regional logistics for a tourism company and always looked put together. He wore ironed linen even to family barbecues. He knew which wine paired with what, which fork to use at formal dinners, and how to win over her mother with well-timed compliments. Everyone loved Thomas, especially her mother. "You're so lucky, Lana," her mother had said countless times, resting a manicured hand on Lana's arm. "Thomas is so grounded, so loyal, he's like a son to me." Lana used to agree, used to feel lucky, until the wedding. There was a moment, brief and almost invisible, when Lana saw something she couldn't quite name. It was after the ceremony, while she was scrolling through footage on the back of her camera, selecting shots to compile for a surprise edit. A wide shot of the reception tent. Then a pan past the catering staff. Then, Thomas, standing close to Lena. Too close. They were laughing at something. Not unusual. They got along. But his hand, resting on the small of Lena's back, fingers grazing just under the strap of her dress, that wasn't familial. Not for Lana. She blinked, rewound, played it again. Still there, just for a second, but enough. Her chest tightened. But she said nothing. Instead, she downloaded the footage to her laptop, telling herself it was nothing, that it was her photographer's mind playing tricks, seeking patterns, tension, implied narratives where there were none. Lena had always been playful, touchy, dramatic. Even as a child, she was the one who danced at weddings, cried at commercials, flirted without meaning to. Lana had spent most of their childhoods cleaning up her messes, from broken curfews to broken hearts. And Thomas, he was just being friendly. Right. Still, a thought buzzed at the edge of her mind, a thought that wouldn't leave. During the days leading up to the wedding, Thomas had seemed distant, not cold, exactly, but elsewhere. His attention wavered during conversations. When Lana showed him the final seating chart, he nodded without looking. When she mentioned that Lena was nervous about her vows, he shrugged. It was subtle, but Lana noticed. She always noticed. The night after the wedding, Thomas fell asleep quickly, too quickly, as if the weight he'd carried had been lifted. Lana, meanwhile, stayed up. She opened her editing software and began sorting through the raw footage. She told herself it was to surprise Lena with a mini video. But really, she wanted to look again. At that moment, that touch, it wasn't just one frame. Not anymore. The more she slowed the footage, the more she saw Lena reaching for Thomas's lapel and smoothing it. Thomas whispering something into her ear. Her laughing, resting a hand on his chest. It didn't scream affair, not yet, but it whispered something worse. Familiarity. Comfort. A language between them that excluded everyone else. Lana sat back in her chair, her heart tapping an uneven rhythm. She stared at the timeline on her screen, her fingers hovering over the delete key. She didn't press it. Instead, she labeled the file, unedited, private. She minimized the window and glanced at the framed photo on her desk, a shot of her and Thomas in Kauai 2 years ago. They were laughing, happy, but now, she couldn't remember what they had been laughing about. The memory felt borrowed. That week, Lana went through the motions. She delivered the wedding photos. She replied to client emails. She attended a community event with Thomas and smiled at the appropriate times. But she began to notice more. Thomas on his phone late at night, typing quickly and turning the screen when she walked in. Lena sending shorter texts, less emojis, less warmth. Their mother praising Thomas more than usual. He was such a calming force during the wedding. She said, "You should be proud of him." Pride wasn't the word Lana would have used. One night, Thomas was showering and his phone buzzed. Lana glanced. A message preview from Lena. "You okay?" She seemed off tonight. She, not Lana, just she. Lana locked the phone again. Her reflection in the dark screen stared back. Unreadable. That night, she opened the video file again. This time, she clipped out a specific portion, the moment behind the reception tent. She slowed it, zoomed, sharpened, then exported it as a separate file. She didn't know why, just that she needed it. In the silence of her home office, surrounded by external hard drives and camera lenses, Lana began to feel like a stranger in her own marriage. Not because of a kiss, not because of a text, but because of everything in between. The things you don't see unless you know where to look. And Lana had always known how to look. She shut the laptop, and for the first time in years, she felt completely, utterly alone, not just in her marriage, but in her family. And that was when she realized. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the ones who hold the camera when you say, "I do," and smile while doing it. The morning after the wedding, Lana made herself a cup of tea instead of coffee. Her hands trembled slightly, but it wasn't from the lack of caffeine. The footage from the night before had settled in her bones, like cold rain in an old roof. It wasn't one image, it was the implication of something seen but not proven, yet impossible to ignore. She returned to her office, slid her headphones on, and clicked open the project timeline. Hundreds of clips lined the screen. Smiling faces, clinking glasses, tears during speeches, all the things that made weddings look like magic. But magic, she was starting to realize, could be edited. She slowed down the footage, frame by frame. There, behind the curtain near the back exit of the tent, where the lighting was softer, the air quieter, she isolated a segment. Thomas and Lena. They weren't just standing close. They were embracing, not a congratulatory hug, not the type shared between in-laws. It was intimate, familiar. Lena's arms looped behind Thomas's neck. His hands gripped her waist with a softness that was practiced, like muscle memory. Then, his lips brushed the back of her neck. Lana froze the frame, then played it again. There was no room for misinterpretation now. This was no accident, no editing trick, no photographic illusion. This was a kiss, a secret, stolen one. Her fingers moved on their own, dragging the clip into a new folder, evidence. For a long while, she didn't blink. Her tea had gone cold. Her heart beat as if somewhere far away, not in her chest. Her breathing was shallow, barely perceptible. She should have screamed. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, "Okay." A confirmation, an acknowledgement, a vow to herself that she wasn't crazy. She walked outside and let the wind hit her face. It was late morning, and the neighborhood was alive with normal things: lawnmowers, kids on bikes, a delivery truck. But to Lana, everything sounded distant, underwater. She was a character who had just stepped outside her own story. She went back inside, picked up her phone, and texted her videographer, Corey. "Hey, random question. Did you guys cut any footage from the Lena and Darren project that you thought I wouldn't need?" A pause. Then the reply, not really. Just some background junk." "Why?" She typed, "No worries. Just being thorough." But her mind screamed, "You knew. You edited it out." Lana opened the main project folder again. Searched for any discrepancies. Time stamps didn't line up. There were missing seconds. Small gaps between clips. Not enough to raise alarm for most. But Lana lived in seconds. In timing. In light shifts and glances. Someone had tried to hide something. She texted Corey again. "Could you send me the raw backup? Just to double-check a couple transitions." He replied a few minutes later, "I'll upload it by tonight." "Need a drive." She said thanks, then stared at the screen. During the reception, Thomas had danced with Lana only once. It had felt stiff, distracted. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Lena had danced 4 times, with Darren, with their father, with her college friends, and once. Lana remembered, with Thomas, just for a moment. Lana had thought it sweet at the time. Now, she realized they had been trying to be careful, just not careful enough. She scrolled further. One wide shot of the dance floor showed Thomas seated at the edge, drink in hand, watching, but not Lana. Lena. His gaze locked on her in the middle of the crowd, laughing with her friends, twirling, radiant. He watched her like she was his son. Lana watched the footage like it was a eulogy. She copied the file, stored it in the same folder. That night, she didn't ask Thomas about anything. She made dinner, pasta. He complimented the sauce. She smiled. He asked if she wanted to watch something. She said she was tired. In her room, door closed, she played the clip again. The kiss, the gaze. She played them like prayers. Or curses. The next morning, she dressed for a shoot. Neutral colors, simple makeup. But when she looked in the mirror, something had shifted. Her face was the same, but her eyes carried weight. A knowing, a fracture. She texted Lena, "Loved editing the wedding footage. You looked beautiful." Lena replied instantly, "Oh, thank you. Love you, big sis." Lana stared at the screen. Then replied, "Always." Later that day, she bought an external hard drive. A small, black one. She labeled it, "Truth," and tucked it in the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet. Because if no one else was going to hold on to it, she would. Because sometimes, the only evidence you have is what you refuse to delete. And sometimes, love doesn't die in loud betrayals. It dies in whispered names. In eyes that don't look back. In hands that learn the shape of someone else's skin. And Lana knew now. She was standing at the doorway of something vast. dark, and irreversible, and once she stepped through, she could never go back. The next week, Lana began with a spreadsheet. It was her usual process for large projects: organizing footage, client deadlines, editing timelines. But this time, it wasn't for work, it was for time. She started with Thomas's calendar. His supposed work trips, weekend retreats, sudden overnight conferences in Maui or North Shore. She noted the dates, backtracked through her memory, when he left, what he said, how long he was gone. Then she matched those with Lina's social media posts. Some were easy. Lina had uploaded stories from yoga retreats, spa weekends, and solo beach reflections. Captions like, "Time to reset," or "My body, my temple." But Lana noticed patterns. Photos without geotags, lighting that matched weather on the opposite side of the island, a robe that looked familiar. She began overlaying the data, his trips, her retreats. The overlaps weren't coincidences, they were consistent, strategic, intentional. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. Instead, she opened Thomas's old eCloud account. He'd once asked her to help recover it after forgetting a password. She remembered the security questions, their anniversary date, his mother's maiden name, the name of their first dog. Seconds later, she was in. Most of it had been wiped. But not all. Deep in the backups were selfies, partially deleted. But not from cloud storage. Some were blurry, dimly lit, but one stood out. Thomas, shirtless, in a beach house mirror. Behind him, blurry but unmistakable, Lina's reflection. She was in a bathrobe. Not just any robe, a deep maroon velvet one Lana had bought during a trip to Portland. A robe she'd left at home, thinking she'd lost it in the laundry. Her throat went dry. She saved the image, named it silently, northshore.jpg. Then she found an audio folder, mostly mundane voice notes, reminders. But one stood out. It was Lina, leaving a message to their mother. "Hey mom. Just checking in. Wedding plans are stressful. Don't let Lana go crazy with the details. I'll try to get Thomas to calm her down. You know he's good at that." In the background, Thomas laughed. "Tell her I'll cook her favorite if she stops reorganizing the napkin placements." Their mother laughed too. Lana dropped the phone. She stood in the middle of the room, shaking. She realized, her mother had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to normalize it, enough to look away. And suddenly, she was back to being 12. Watching her mother cover for Lina after breaking a vase and blaming the dog. Watching Lina get away with it because she cried louder. Because she charmed quicker. Only now the vase was her marriage. Only now the cracks couldn't be swept. She dug further. An Instagram comment from a profile called @islandglow.studio, "Atlanavisions is so underrated. Book her before she gets famous." The profile had no posts. But it followed many of Lana's former clients, including ones who had ghosted her recently, choosing other photographers without warning. Lana checked the profile's recovery email. It ended in lena.events@gmail.com. Her sister had been manipulating her client base, smiling to her face, undercutting her behind it. She closed the laptop, let her head fall into her hands. She felt hollow, not angry, not yet. That would come later. This was the moment between breaths, between certainty and collapse. And she knew, this was no longer about marriage. This was war. She reopened the spreadsheet, renamed it, Operation Veil, and typed, Target 1, Lina, Target 2, Thomas, unknown variable, Mom, underneath, in bold, objective, truth before ceremony. And the cursor blinked like a metronome for revenge. She clicked open another tab, and started writing a script for a short film, starring herself, directed by the betrayed. Footage, already collected, and soon to be seen. By everyone, even if it was the last gift she ever gave her family. The room was golden with candlelight, filled with the soft clinking of glasses and the hum of a string quartet playing a gentle Hawaiian medley. It was the "thank you" dinner, a gesture of gratitude from Lana and Thomas to both families for their love. support, and presence through the years. But Lana stood at the edge of the room like a ghost observing the living. Her dress was pale blue, her makeup soft and warm, her smile barely stitched to her face. When her name was called to make the toast, she stepped up, slow and graceful, like she had rehearsed it in her head for weeks. Her voice was calm. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This room is filled with people who built our lives. People who taught us what love looks like, what loyalty means." She paused, and I want to take a moment to thank two people especially. One, a man who taught me that not every embrace means safety, and the other, a woman who reminded me that not all family is grateful for the life they were given. The air shifted, chairs creaked, a murmur pulsed under the music. Lana took the remote from her clutch. The screen behind her flickered to life. I brought a short highlight reel. Not of a wedding, of something more intimate. The first clip played. Thomas and Lena, behind the wedding tent, arms tangled, a kiss on the neck. Gasps erupted. Someone dropped a fork. Lana didn't turn around to watch. She'd memorized the footage. She looked only at the crowd. At her mother, whose mouth parted but said nothing. At Thomas, frozen. At Lena, whose face drained of color. The next scene, the mirror selfie in the beach house. Lena's reflection, the robe. Lena burst into tears. Thomas stood. "Lana, turn that off." He lunged forward and slammed his hand against the projector screen. It tilted. A glass shattered nearby. Lana didn't move. Her voice, when it came, was colder. "I spent 10 years believing I was building something sacred. Turns out, I was just decorating the altar you two were desecrating." Lena fled the room. Her heels clacked wildly down the hallway. Someone followed her, calling her name. Thomas stared at Lana, eyes wild. "What the hell is wrong with you? You want to ruin your family, in public?" Lana held up her phone. "You already did. I just kept the receipts." Their mother stood then, walked up, slapped Lana hard across the face. The room gasped again. "You went too far," her mother hissed. "You think humiliation heals betrayal? You're just spiteful." Lana didn't flinch. She looked at her mother the way someone looks at a stranger who just asked for spare change. Then she stepped down from the platform, gathered her bag, and walked out. That night, Lana received an email from Thomas. A lawsuit, defamation, emotional distress, loss of professional credibility, and then a court order, temporary loss of custody. Thomas had filed emergency documents stating her mental instability was affecting the daughter. She screamed for the first time. Into a pillow, then into her hands, then into nothing. Days passed. Lena released a statement. "I made mistakes. I hurt my sister, but no one deserves to be destroyed like that." Rumors swirled that Lena was pregnant. Speculation flooded online forums. Lana said nothing, to no one. She withdrew, deleted her social media, stopped taking clients, moved into a rented studio above a ceramics gallery, spent her mornings photographing objects that didn't lie. One night, she typed a single message to Thomas. "You can take the house, the car, your story, just don't use our daughter to cover the filth you left behind." She never got a reply. But in her dreams, she kept seeing that night. The screen lighting up, her sister's face breaking, her mother's hand rising, and herself, standing in the middle of it all. Still, steady, and completely alone. The cost of truth was never clarity. It was exile. It was a Wednesday morning when they found her car, parked at the Makapu'u lookout, just beyond the bend, where the cliff rolls into the ocean like a stone surrendering to waves. Lana's gray Subaru sat quietly against the wind. Door locked, keys still inside. In the passenger seat, a brown leather bag. Inside it, a USB drive. And a letter, written in her unmistakable script. "I have said what needed to be said. The rest is yours to carry. I won't argue over who deserves the truth. Let it be free." There was no note of farewell, no apology, just that final thought, delivered like the click of a shutter. They searched for days. Coast Guard, local volunteers, even drones hovering above the crashing surf. But there was no body, no signs of a fall. No footprints near the edge. Just the echo of her name in the wind. Some said she had jumped. Others believed she had staged her disappearance. That she had boarded a ferry and started anew somewhere far from the eyes that betrayed her. Whatever the case, Lana was gone, and the island felt colder without her. Thomas lost his job within a week. The footage spread. A cousin leaked it to a blog. Then it went viral. The video wasn't just about infidelity. It was about deception wrapped in family. About betrayal hiding behind lays and luau speeches. Public opinion turned fast. His company issued a statement. "We do not condone any form of personal misconduct, especially when it involves abuse of familial or professional trust. Mr. Cahill is no longer employed by our firm. He moved out of their home, tried to clear his name, hired PR, made a podcast appearance, but the internet doesn't forget. He stopped showing up at school events. The court delayed full custody hearings indefinitely. And he drank. Lena gave birth alone. It was a girl. No father listed on the certificate. No family in the room. She wore sunglasses even in hospital photos. When reporters once followed her into a coffee shop, she screamed at them until the manager escorted her out. She no longer smiled in public. And when she did, it didn't reach her eyes. People whispered, maybe she didn't know. Maybe she did. But Lana knew the truth. Or had. Lana's son went to live with her aunt in Hilo. A gentle woman with quiet hands and a garden of succulents that never died. He was 6. He asked about his mom every Sunday. Did she go to take pictures of the moon again? Is she coming back when I'm 10? One day, he pointed to the sky and said, "That cloud looks like her. But only if you squint." The aunt never corrected him, only hugged him tighter. Months passed. The school Lana once taught at held a candlelight vigil. No photo, no funeral, just music, flowers, notes tied to white balloons. One balloon read, "Ms. Lana, I still remember when you said cameras capture truth. You captured mine. I hope you know that." Another read, "I wish you were here. People lie less when you're around." And then there was the wooden sign, hung by a former student on the gate, painted in block letters. She didn't disappear, she just moved somewhere no one lies. The sign stayed up for 2 weeks before someone took it down. But by then, it didn't matter, because truth, once told, doesn't vanish, it haunts. And Lana, wherever she was, had become more than a woman. She was a consequence, a ghost in the shape of justice, a name no one could say without shame. And in Pearl City, when the sun set just right, some swore they could hear her shutter click, like a final word, like proof that someone once dared to see everything and still chose to tell the world. And maybe, just maybe, that was the bravest thing anyone ever did. But if Lana from Pearl City was the ghost that haunted a lie too long hidden, then Tama from Molokai was the storm no one saw coming. When the island is small, secrets don't stay buried, unless someone buries them for good. Up next on Infidelity Chronicles. Tama from Molokai. His wife thought the island was too small for secrets. A betrayal, a meal, and a legend no one dares speak of after dark. The sea never tells the same story twice. In the village of Kalaupapa on the quiet cliffs of Molokai, life was slow and symmetrical. Fishermen told time by the tides. Breadfruit trees grew where they always had. Dogs barked at passing boats like clockwork. And in the middle of it all, Tama lived like a stone at the ocean's edge, still, sturdy, but slowly reshaped by things he would never say out loud. He was 41, a fisherman by trade, a smoker of banana-wrapped AKU by reputation. They said his grilled fish could cure hangovers and heartbreak. And maybe that was true. People trusted Tama, not just for his food, but because he was the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Who remembered how people liked their coffee. Who always offered the last piece of grilled pineapple, even when he wanted it. His wife, Mela, was 34. She worked in tourism, guiding eco-hikers, arranging snorkeling tours, sometimes flying to Oahu or Maui for meetings. She wore aviator sunglasses that mirrored the sky and laughed with her whole mouth. Mela was beautiful in the way the sea is when it hides its storms. They had no children, but they had Paku, a half-blind mutt with a crooked tail who slept at Tama's feet like a hairy old soul. And then there was Kimmo, Tama's oldest friend, the kind who shows up with rum and vanishes with your secrets. They had surfed together at 16, gotten drunk together at 18, and buried parents within a year of each other. Kimmo was part of the family, or so Tama believed. Kimmo visited often, sometimes uninvited, sometimes drunk, always welcome. He'd crash on the futon, talk about some girl from Maui, and laugh until the geckos on the wall froze to listen. But something had shifted. It was Mela first. The way she began to answer questions with one-word replies. The way she stopped sitting beside Tama during dinner. How she left her phone face down. Or how she once flinched when Tama reached to brush sand from her cheek. Then came the morning. The sun had barely broken over the ridgeline when Tama woke to the soft creak of the front door. He didn't move. He listened. Footsteps. Light. Familiar. Not Mela. He watched from the shadows as Kimmo emerged. Shirtless. Carrying his flip-flops in hand. He moved like a thief. Like someone who had forgotten what silence owed the morning. Tama said nothing. Kimmo paused at the gate. Looked around. Then slipped away. Moments later, Mela stirred from the bedroom. Stretching like someone who had slept alone. "Sleep okay?" she asked. Avoiding his eyes. "Yeah," Tama lied. She made coffee. Paku growled quietly under the table. The next clue was a piece of lace. He found it in the laundry 2 days later. A crimson undergarment with gold trim. Too small for Mela. Not her style. Not her size. Not hers. He held it for a long time before folding it into his fishing jacket. He didn't ask. He didn't accuse. Because Tama wasn't the type to confront until he was certain. He wasn't built for rage. He was built for waiting. For letting things rise to the surface in their own time. But the silence inside him began to split. At night, Mela would hum in the shower. A tune he didn't recognize. Her shampoo smelled different. She began using coconut oil on her legs again, something she hadn't done in years. Her phone pinged at odd hours. She smiled more at strangers. Less at him. Kimmo came over again that week. Brought poke and beers. Laughed louder than the jokes deserved. Mela joined them on the lanai. Wearing the green dress Tama used to love. She poured Kimmo an extra drink without asking. And Tama watched. He didn't taste the beer. He didn't hear the waves. All he saw was the flash of Kimmo's hand brushing Mela's when she reached for the lighter. She didn't pull away fast enough. And in that second, the quiet inside Tama cracked. But still, he smiled. He toasted. He fed them both grilled AKU with lemongrass and sesame oil. Later that night, when Mela said she was too tired to talk, he simply nodded. He waited until she slept. Then he walked to the beach, stood barefoot on the cold sand, and whispered into the wind. "You sure, old sea, you sure this is how the story goes?" The ocean didn't answer, but a wave lapped close enough to wet his toes. Tama looked down, and in the moonlight, he saw the footprints beside his own. Smaller, lighter, walking away. He didn't need proof. He already knew. Something had changed. The story was starting to write itself. And it would not end well. But for now, Tama returned home. He lay beside Mela, who slept facing the wall. He curled beside Paku, who whimpered in his dreams. And he closed his eyes, waiting for the tide to turn. The sea had begun to whisper things Tama couldn't unhear. He walked differently now, quieter, more deliberate, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Awareness that every gesture, every smile, every sidelong glance from Mela or Kimmo might carry weight, might confirm what he already knew in his bones. That something sacred had been broken. He didn't ask questions. He didn't confront, but his mind, once content to drift like the tide, had become sharp. Like reef stone under shallow water. Then came the bridge. It was an old one. Nothing more than planks and rusted nails stretched over a quiet stream near the edge of the forest. Tama hadn't been there in months. But when he passed it on a routine walk, Something pulled him closer, a whisper in the reeds, a smell of perfume too elegant for Molokai. Later that night, he opened Mailer's old phone again. He scrolled further, found another message, this one with a timestamp from weeks ago. Next time under the bridge. Bring that wine again. Still dreaming of that night. Tama didn't shake, he didn't cry, he just closed the phone and placed it back where he found it. And in that silence, something inside him settled, not peace, not yet, but certainty. In the following days, he observed. He didn't stalk or accuse, he noticed. Like a fisherman watches the shadows of fish. Kimmo visited less, but when he did, there was a nervous energy beneath his jokes, a stutter in his laugh. He no longer finished his drink. He didn't meet Tama's eyes. And Mailer, her restlessness grew. She took longer showers, wore lip gloss for trips to the post office. When Tama asked how work was, she always said, "Fine, too fast." Once, she said she had a migraine but left the house anyway. The world around Tama grew sharper, its colors more vivid. The sea was bluer, the clouds heavier, the silence between words stretched longer. One afternoon, Tama decided to take Paku on a longer walk than usual. Through the jungle trail, past the cliffs, around the northern bend where the tourists didn't go. That's when he saw them. Far enough not to hear, but close enough to see. Kimmo and Mailer, in the grove, standing too close. Kimmo reached up and brushed her hair behind her ear. Mailer tilted her head, a gesture she only used when she trusted someone deeply. They didn't kiss, they didn't speak, but their silence was more intimate than anything Tama had seen between them before. He watched, not moving, not breathing. When he finally turned away, the world did not spin. It merely dimmed. That night, Mailer made fish stew, told a story about a coworker who got seasick, laughed at her own punchline. Tama nodded, smiled when she looked his way, fed bits of taro to Paku, then excused himself. Outside, in the darkness, Tama fell to his knees and vomited into the soil beside the breadfruit tree. The night was still, but Paku barked, once, twice, then kept going. Mailer came out, asked what was wrong. Tama said it must have been the shrimp. She rubbed his back. Her hand was warm, but it felt like a stranger's touch. Inside his chest, his heart didn't race. It slowed, like it was learning how to wait again. Because now, the question was no longer if. It was when. When did they begin? When would they fall? And when would the sea, so full of secrets, finally carry this one away? He tucked Paku in early, sharpened a knife not for use, but for habit, sat on the porch for hours listening to the wind. Somewhere, Mailer was texting. He could see the screen light flickering through the bedroom curtain. She didn't know he was watching. And he didn't tell her. Because some truths do not need to be said to be known. They live in the silence. And in that silence, Tama was becoming someone else. Someone even he couldn't yet name. Molokai was a quiet island. But it had many eyes. Tama learned that quickly, and he knew how to look without being seen. When Mailer told him she was going to Honolulu for a conference, he didn't ask questions. He helped her pack, even folded her favorite sarong. She smiled, touched his cheek, said she'd be back in 3 days. She left on the morning ferry. But that night, Tama followed, not to Honolulu. He had no need. He followed a different trail. Mailer had forgotten her second phone, the one she thought he didn't know about. It pinged from a small house tucked behind palm trees on the southern side of the island. Kimmo's house. Tama sat in the brush for hours. Watched the lights flick on. Watched shadows move inside. Laughter drifted through the window, hers and Kimmo's. Familiar, playful, then hushed. He didn't need to see more. But he stayed, waited, and recorded. Through the cracked window, he caught snippets of their voices. He has no clue. He still thinks I'm on the mainland. You sure he won't find out? He never asks. That's the thing about Tama. He trusts too much. Pause. A laugh. Let's keep it that way, until we figure out the rest. Tama closed the recorder, walked home in the dark. That night, he fed Paku early and sat in silence. The firepit glowed low. Mela wouldn't be home for 2 more days. But her betrayal had already arrived. In the morning, he went to the docks and bought fish. Not just any fish, pufferfish. Rare, beautiful, dangerous. He said it was for a special order, a festival. He lied. No one questioned. Tama was respected, trusted. He had handled fish all his life. Who would doubt the man with the cleanest knife on the island? Back home, he practiced, not preparation. He already knew how. It was reverence. The blade must be precise. The cut must be perfect. One slip, and the poison would spread. But he did not slip. He never had. Days passed. Mela returned. She smelled of foreign soap and citrus. Kissed his neck like nothing had changed. Brought him a souvenir, a tiny glass bottle filled with colored sand. From Waikiki, she said. He nodded, placed it on the shelf. Beside it, a photograph of the 3 of them, him, Mela, and Kimo, from years ago. That night, he lay awake, heard her breathing, heard her dream, and remembered something strange. Weeks before, at a small backyard party, he had overheard Kimo's mother. She'd been drinking, speaking to another elder. Those 2 always danced too close. Even back when he was marrying Mela. I told my son to stay away. But some temptations don't pass. He hadn't understood it then. He did now. It had started before the wedding. Maybe it had never ended. Tama's world didn't collapse. It crystallized. He began keeping a log. A timeline. Where Mela had been. When Kimo had been away. The overlapping days. The gaps in their stories. The photos with date stamps that didn't match the stories they told. He followed Kimo once more. Saw him with another woman. Not Mela. Someone younger, dressed in bright city clothes. They kissed behind the surf shop like teenagers. So, even his betrayal wasn't pure. That night, Tama laughed. Not out loud, not in joy, but in disbelief. They had betrayed him, and each other, not just in flesh, but in memory, in truth, in all the quiet ways that trust gets eaten from the inside. The next day, Tama sharpened his knife again. Not the kitchen one, the ceremonial one, passed down from his grandfather. He opened the family book. Read the old stories. There was one his grandmother used to whisper, of a fisherman betrayed by blood and bone. Who prepared a final feast. Who served pufferfish with a smile. Not all poison kills, she'd said, some just sets the story right. He set the table. 3 plates. For a dinner that hadn't yet been scheduled. But was already decided. The invitation came in the form of a handwritten note. Folded neatly beside a bottle of sake on Kimo's porch. Dinner. One last meal before the tide changes. Bring Mela. Tama signed it simply. T. Kimo laughed when he read it. Told Mela. He's finally trying to be civil. Maybe the old man softened. Mela smiled. Unsure. Her stomach turned. But she chalked it up to nerves. Not guilt. Not exactly. That night, the table was set for 3. Tiki torches flickered in the trade winds. A garland of shell flowers hung on the fence. Paku lay curled by the door. Eyes wide, unmoving. Tama stood by the grill. Fish sizzled, brushed with herbs and a subtle glaze. He served it with taro, seaweed salad, and a red chili sauce passed down from his grandfather. Plates were portioned with meticulous balance. Smells incredible, Kimo said, clapping him on the back. Mela kissed Tama's cheek. Thanks for this. I know things have been complicated. Tama smiled. Tonight, let's forget all that. Let's eat like family. They did. Conversation flowed. The sake helped. Kimo talked about moving to Maui. Mela mentioned a possible promotion. Tama listened, laughed, poured more drinks, and watched. They both cleaned their plates. He didn't. Within an hour, Kimo began to sweat. His hands shook. He asked for water. Mela tried to steady him, but her fingers trembled too. Tama fetched the jug, calm as ever. Then Kimo collapsed. Mela screamed. She clutched her stomach, then stumbled to her knees. Tama didn't rush to help. He stood over Kimo's body, watching the final spasms. What did you do? Mela cried. Voice hoarse. Tama looked at her, then at the fish bones, then at the stars. I cleaned everything, he said, inside and out. An ambulance came. Too late for Kimmo, not too late for Mela. At the hospital, doctors noted pufferfish toxin, in small doses, often undetectable, but combined with alcohol, fatal. The police arrived next. They asked questions. Tama answered with stillness. A young detective noticed the fish supplier receipt, a rare type purchased the week before. He traced it back. They came for Tama 3 days later. He did not run. At the station, he said only one thing. I set the table. They chose to eat. The island whispered again. Some said he was a monster. Others called it justice. Some simply shook their heads and muttered about curses. Old blood. And what happens when betrayal meets tradition? Paku was given to a neighbor. The house was locked. The shell garlands faded in the sun. And in a cell where the sea couldn't reach, Tama sat, still, clean, waiting for the tide to turn again. Tama was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The courtroom had been full but silent. No outbursts, just the slow weight of judgment. Mela did not attend. She had already left Molokai. Some said she went to Oahu. Others heard she changed her name and moved to the mainland. No one knew for certain. No one asked. The news spread quickly. For a week, Tama's name was on every radio, every whispering corner of the island. Headlines read, Molokai fisherman kills friend in poison dinner. But locals had their own versions. He was betrayed. He just cleaned house. He did it the old way. The island way. It's wrong. But it's not unheard of. No one forgot, but no one agreed. In Halawa Correctional Facility, Tama kept to himself. He refused interviews, refused visitors, but he wrote. His journal became a collection of verses. Not long, not loud, short, clean lines about the ocean, knives, salt, and silence. One poem simply read, "Fish don't lie, they just die open-eyed." He titled the notebook, "To Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay." It was passed around by guards. A local professor published a few pieces in a literary journal. Readers were divided. Was this remorse? Or just reflection? Back on Molokai, time passed slowly. The house remained empty. Neighbors trimmed the lawn once a month. No one touched the shell garlands. They crumbled in the wind. Paku, the old dog, died in his sleep one winter night. A fisherman buried him behind the smoke pit. Kimmo was buried quietly. His family did not hold a large service. Too many questions. Too much shame. His mother moved to Hilo. Mela never sent word. 1 year, on the anniversary of the dinner, someone placed 3 red stones at the doorstep of Tama's home. No note, just stones, the color of blood and lava. Children grew up hearing the tale of the quiet man, the cheating wife, the best friend turned ghost. They whispered it at bonfires and dared each other to walk past his old gate at night. But not everyone feared him. Some remembered the way he spoke at fish markets, how he folded leaves with reverence, how he never raised his voice. A teacher at the local school read one of his poems in class. Afterward, a boy raised his hand. Is it true? Did the fish know who lied? The teacher didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the window. To the ocean, calm, endless, reflecting only what you brought to it. And the class fell silent. Tama never wrote a second book. But on the 25th page of his first, scrawled faintly in the corner, were the only words he never showed the world. I loved them. That was the first mistake. And maybe the last truth he ever told. 10 stories, 10 islands, 10 betrayals woven deep into the sands of Hawaii. Some ended in silence, some in blood, all in truth. But if you thought paradise was where it ended, think again. Next, welcome to Florida. A place where affairs hide behind orange groves, luxury condos, and the glow of poolside secrets. Where every lie has a tan, and every truth ends with a storm. Stay tuned for Series 10 True Affair Stories from Florida. Because sunshine doesn't always mean innocence.